Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
The session with Fuyuko sensei yesterday had gone fairly well in my own opinion, and hers as well from what I gathered. It had been emotionally draining, going over the two close calls I had with death during the battle for Tensai Bridge, re-experiencing the anger that I felt when I had fought the Jonin Nana, the grim realization when I was overwhelmed by the Chunin Shiki. She had assured me that those feelings were completely normal and common, especially for shinobi who never know what would happen next, and each mission could honestly be our last, whether it was from bad luck, accident, or our enemy was just plain better than us. The rest of the meeting had been talking about the fact that I was experiencing a war before I was even a teen. I was pretty sure she was trying to probe me to see if I was harboring resentments against Konoha for being forced to fight before I even hit the double digits for my age. I wasn't, for your information. Following the meeting I had pretty much went straight home, only stopping to pick up a meal at a local restaurant. Our fridge was empty because none of us knew when we were going to be returning, and at the moment we only had canned goods that would last through an apocalypse, and let's just say that I would rather eat field rations before eating those. Seriously, field rations don't quite taste like, but it's a fairly close approximation. After eating, I had spent some time leveling up my chakra control skills, tree walking, and water walking, before calling it quits and headed for bed, sleeping like a complete rock. Now I was on my way back to Suguro's to pick up my new jacket. Unfortunately, my usual combat outfit had been pretty much damaged beyond repair during my fight with Nana, leaving me with little in terms of defensive options. But I was a kunoichi. I wasn't supposed to sit and take enemy attacks like some kind of samurai. I'm supposed to dodge them. Besides, I found a nifty little seal not too long ago that would allow me to increase the defensive abilities of cloth-based objects. It wouldn't quite be as strong as, say, iron, but apparently it could make something like a cotton-weaved shirt as strong as Kevlar. And considering that most shinobi outfits are made out of tougher materials, I think I would be able to get away without wearing armor. Good morning, I called out as I entered the shop, getting the attention of Suguro. Ah, welcome back, Yuriko-chan. He called out cheerfully. Here to pick up your order, then. One sec, Hane. Yuriko is here for her custom order. Coming. A feminine voice called out before a red-haired, blue-eyed woman appeared from behind the large shopkeeper. Everything Suguro was physically. His daughter wasn't, apparently, not even a foot taller than me. The teen woman was soft curves and tiny, especially when compared to the giant that was her father. Yes, I got your jacket right here, she confirmed, smiling widely at me as she handed the jacket over to me, the Uchiha clan symbol emblazoned on it. Grinning, I accepted the jacket and immediately threw it on over the sleeveless black shirt I was wearing, testing out its fit. Thanks a lot, I said gratefully, adjusting the collar a bit. It's good work. Looking up from my jacket, I met the scrutinizing gaze of Hane. What? I questioned nervously as her eyes bored into me. That skirt does not work with that jacket, she told me after several moments of nervous silence, her father groaning as he slid his face into the palm of his hand, muttering something that sounded like, "Here we go again." The undershirt works, but blue and red. They just clash in a terrible way. I blinked as I took a nervous step back from her, a strange feeling of inadequacy welling up inside of me. I don't have any other colors for my skirts, I replied defensively. The civilian woman huffed in response before grabbing a hold of my wrist and began dragging me over to the changing room and shoved me in. Wait here, she commanded before stalking off. Blinking in shock, I turned to Suguro, who simply shook his head in response. She gets like that whenever she encounters a travesty of fashion, as she calls it, he replied with a long-suffering sigh. Just go along with it, many are actually happy with the result. I nodded slowly, turning my nervous gaze to the teen who was darting through the clothing racks set up in a corner of the store before turning back to her father. Actually, There was something I wanted to ask you about, I spoke up, getting his attention again. I was wondering, do you have any kind of holsters for a kodachi that will work on the leg? I questioned him. See, I normally have it on my back, but it's hard to draw it quickly when it's behind me, and I need my waist free so I can reach my pouch easier. Suguro hummed in response before nodding in understanding. I think I get what you're looking for. 1 second, he requested before disappearing into the back, just as Hane appeared before me again, shoving an armful of clothes into me. Try these on, she urged me before shutting the door closed. Blinking at how what was supposed to be a simple pickup was progressing, I let out a sigh of resignation and began pulling off my own clothing to do as she said. It didn't take me too long to change my clothing, the clothing she had selected for me being simple to pull on, a trait shared by most shinobi outfits, and looking at myself in the mirror, I had to reluctantly agree, it did work. My shirt was still black, but was now a t-shirt that covered some of my upper arm with a pair of reinforced gloves covering my hands. The skirt had been replaced by a crimson-red one that was shorter than the blue one I had been wearing, going midway down to my thigh and bearing a slit on the left side to ensure that it didn't interfere with my mobility. A pair of spats were on underneath to protect my modesty, while a pair of thigh-length stockings led down to me new sandals, my new jacket finishing the entire outfit off. Letting out a sigh, I reluctantly opened the door to an excited cheer. Am I good? Or am I good? Hane questioned with a large grin as she took in my new outfit. It's good, I managed to get out as I looked down at myself, a sinking realization that I really have become a girl sinking into me. Thank you, I guess. Hane grinned at me in response before bobbing her head. Well, she isn't wrong, you definitely look like a kunoichi in that outfit, Suguro informed as he appeared. A tiny one, but a kunoichi nonetheless, he chuckled as I scowled ineffectuality at him before handing over a holster. This goes on your right shin, he explained. Should be exactly what you are looking for. Swallowing my scowl, I accepted he red holster that I quickly strapped around my shin as instructed before unsealing my kodachi and slid it in and secured it. Standing up, I saw that it came up to my thigh and tried moving around, even sticking myself to the ceiling of the shop before testing the draw. It was far faster than when I had it on my back, even when I had tried it on my lower back, the 60 centimeters blade popping out of the sheath with ease as I took a few experimental swings. It's perfect, I announced with a wide grin at the man. So, how much do I owe for all of this and a few spares of the outfit? Turns out, quite a bit, so, 25,000 ryo later I walked out with several copies of my outfit sealed away along with another 3 copies of my new kodachi harness. After dropping the clothing off and grabbing a quick bite to eat, I grabbed the rest of my combat supplies and made my way to the training grounds once again. It was time to train. The Blackwood Forest. As soon as I selected that option as put my hand on the gate, I suddenly found myself in front of a forest that I was damn certain hadn't been there before. Oh right, Tobarama and Madara had decided to with space-time for whatever reason to make pocket dimensions to shove chakra mutations into. Shaking my head, I let out a sigh before stepping towards the forest and began walking through it. Hey, it's a bunch of squirrels, what's the worst that could happen? I really should have known better to tempt Murphy. Seriously, what in the hell was wrong with me when I thought that? Now I was surrounded by waist-high 2 feet tall ravenous beasts that were slavering at getting a taste of poor helpless little Yuriko. Well, maybe not helpless, I guess, I admitted to myself as my kodachi, alight with chakra flow, chakra scalpel cut deeply into a squirrel that had taken a running leap for my throat. The crimson squirrel screeched as my blade cut into it, severely damaging several of its organs and muscles. I ignored the beast as I turned to the next beast, flinging a handful of shuriken at it to get it to back away before storing my kodachi to form the seals for a new fire jutsu that I picked up from the Uchiha Jutsu library. Fire release. Phoenix Sage Fire. I intoned as I spat out a shotgun-like blast of fireballs that slammed into 3 of the squirrels, the hidden shuriken within the technique adding to the damage as they tumbled back. My instincts flared, making me roll to the side as another squirrel charged out from the underbrush to try and jump onto me. Once I was clear, I drew out my kodachi, slashing as it came free, applying a hasty fire release, chakra flow, to the blade as it ignited the squirrel. Placing my back to a tree, I took in steady breaths, holding my kodachi at the ready as I carefully watched the recovering squirrels, the one that I slashed with chakra flow, chakra scalpel finally dying from blood loss. How long has it been since I entered the training ground and started fighting these kami-cursed squirrels? 30 minutes. An hour. Shaking my head, I cut the flow of chakra to the fire release, chakra flow, and reapplied chakra flow, chakra scalpel, both because I wanted to train with it, and because it was honestly more damaging than anything else I had at the moment. My Sharingan alerted me to one of the squirrels leaping up at my face. Predicting its path, I sidestepped its leap and slashed my kodachi through its neck, beheading it instantly before throwing myself in a flip as another squirrel tried to take out my hamstrings, my free hand flashing through seals in the space of a second to form a chakra scalpel, and using it to sever the squirrel's spine. Landing, I struck out with my foot to kick a squirrel away from me before dropping to a knee and stabbing up with my kodachi, another squirrel flying overhead. If I had learned anything during my time on the front lines, it was awareness of my surroundings. It was far too easy to lose myself to the predictive abilities of the Sharingan, relying on it to warn me of danger, when it could only see what I saw. Fighting alongside my brother showed me to be mobile when fighting, to be constantly scanning the area around me, watching below and above as I moved. I leapt and pushed myself off a nearby tree, soaring over a pair of squirrels as I threw my kodachi down into one of them, embedding it into the spine before landing on the other, using my admittedly slight weight to stun the beast before shoving a chakra scalpel into its brain. Grabbing my kodachi, I finished the paralyzed squirrel off before turning around and spotting the final two mobile squirrels slowly getting to their feet. Not allowing them to recover, I formed 3 seals. Fire release. Great fireball. I shouted before releasing a single fireball that was as tall as I was and taking a good chunk of my chakra with it. The 2 squirrels were unable to get out of the way in time and were caught in the flames and died soon after. Panting, I scanned the area for any other threats. I let out a sigh of relief as I only saw the remaining enemy was the other squirrel I had paralyzed. Walking over to it, I finished it off before slumping against a tree. Goddammit. Squirrels are this dangerous. I panted, shaking my head. And it only gets worse from here, Kami, damn it all. Shaking my head, I opened the alerts menu and started sorting through them, ending up with 6,650 express and 5,600 Ryo with an assortment of crafting materials from the 7 squirrels, and that was the 4th ambush that wide today, making it a total of 26,600 express and 22,400 Ryo gained so far, equaling 2 more levels, bringing me up to level 26. Unfortunately, the damned box won't let me apply my new stat points while I'm inside of a dungeon. Talk about a piss off. Shaking my head of the thoughts, I pulled out a sword maintenance kit and began restoring the durability of my kodachi. It was sitting at 40 durability and I didn't want to risk it breaking in the middle of a fight. Once that was finished, I topped off my health before my stomach began to rumble. Must be around noontime then. Hard to see the sun past the thick foliage of the trees, even if light did manage to stream through. Although this was a pocket dimension, so who knew if the sun was even in the right position when compared to outside of the training ground. Pulling a sandwich out of the inventory, I hummed in thought as I ate it. It was strange how my powers worked. Anything I put into the inventory was put into a type of stasis, it seemed. I had tested it with some raw meat and left it for a week. It came out like I had just bought it. And while it automatically looting things from my enemies, I could also put in things that I grabbed from them. And sometimes they had things that they were never even using in the first place. So, where did the items come from? Was it whatever decided to reincarnated me here as Yuriko Uchiha? Something else? Were they benign in nature? Gah, it was hurting my brain too much to think about it, not to mention the feeling dread that filled me the more I thought about it. Yeah, I think in this occasion, ignorance is bliss would be the best route to take until I come across some more solid evidence. Finishing off my sandwich, which also helped restore a portion of my CP thankfully, I stood back up and began heading deeper into the forest. I leapt up into the trees. It was easier for me to remain undetected amongst the leaves than on the ground, as I moved, keeping my Sharingan active as I searched for my next set of enemies. Soon enough I found a small group of rabbits nearby, each of them up to my knees in height, a quick observe telling me they were killer rabbits, making them chakra beasts. Thankfully they hadn't seemed to have noticed me yet as I glided amongst the trees, getting myself into a position for an ambush of my own. I landed on a branch above them, so focused on them that I didn't notice it already had an occupant until I disturbed him. Sitting next to me, staring at me in surprise was what my observe told me was a screaming squirrel, whose mouth was already open and about to start screaming. Well damn, there goes my ambush. The scream the little guy produced was deafening in sound as my hastily drawn kunai managed to silence the critter, although I had been thrown off balance by it and ended up falling to the ground, right in the middle of the now very alert killer rabbits. HP 1315. Status Def temporarily 30 seconds remaining unbalanced. I didn't wait to see what they did or to regain my hearing as I threw myself up and flipped back, just in time to avoid a rabbit slamming down right where I had been lying prone, leaving a sizable dent in the forest floor. I staggered a bit as I got to my feet, my inner ear shot to from that little bastard's scream. Even though I still kept myself moving as I formed the seals for the mystical palm, messing up on my third hand seal and causing a chakra backfire. HP 1263. Status Def temporarily 30 seconds remaining unbalanced. I scowled as my hands shook from the backlash, ducking out of the way of a rabbit's bite. Holy shit, those teeth are sharp. I once again formed the seals, getting them correct this time before placing my now glowing hands over my ears, correcting the damage to my inner ear, restoring my equilibrium. Just in time as the rabbits had managed to herd me into a trap, 5 of them jumped towards me at once. My kodachi was out in a second as I slashed one of the rabbits, tilting my head just enough for one to pass my head by, although it did leave a scratch on my ear. My hand came flying up in a palm strike to the third. The fourth was evaded by bending forward, and in what would probably be an impressive display of flexibility smashed my right foot into the fourth and spinning myself so that I could then drive it into the fifth with a heel drop. Getting myself to my feet, I took a second to apply chakra flow, chakra scalpel, to my kodachi before resuming my battle with the rabbits. The one that had scratched my ear had turned itself around to face me as his fellows recovered from my counter-attacks to leap at me again in a rush of speed. By Kami, these little things had a hell of a leap. It was thanks to my Sharingan I was able to throw myself to the side as I slashed with my kodachi, managing to cleave off one of his legs before turning to side and bringing the blade around to guard against another rabbit's lunge. Holy crap, I was actually sent sliding back that rabbit slamming against my kodachi. Retaliating, I grabbed the still airborne rabbit by the ears before slamming it into my rising knee and tossed it as hard as I could manage into a nearby tree and fired of a single seal, one-handed fire release, fireball, to finish the creature off. Gritting my teeth, I spun around another attempted attack. They only had the one attack, but still, goddamn, there were just so many of them. I was forced to suddenly lean back far enough that I was able to feel the tips of the blades of grass under me tickle my scalp as another one blurred above me. Planting my hands on the ground, I managed to leverage myself into a heel drop on the rabbit, feeling the beast's spine shatter as it was driven into the ground by my foot. Balancing myself on one hand, I stabbed another rabbit with my kodachi as another rabbit tried to take advantage of my disadvantageous position. Flicking the surprisingly heavy body off of my kodachi, I struck another rabbit in the face with a palm strike to throw it off balance and flipped the rest of my body up, balancing on a single hand as another pair tried to take a chunk out of my legs. Bending my elbow, I managed to push myself into the air from that position and flipped so that I landed feet first on the ground. Sweeping my blade in front of me to keep the rabbits from trying to attack as I landed, I leapt back to create more distance as I placed my kodachi back into the sheath. I flipped through the needed seals and inhaled. Fire release. Great fireball. I intoned as I sent out a continuous flame to incinerate the three that were grouped together. Once I was certain they were dealt with, I let up on the flames and scanned the area for any other mobile hostiles and let out a relieved sigh as I began mopping up the ones that were immobile. 9 of the little bastards, damn, did that scream from before bring more in. Gonna have to be more careful for those screamers then, I muttered to myself as I looked up at the foliage above me. Stupid little buggers. Alright, let's see what I got from that little adventure. Opening the alerts menu to check over the reports it gave me on the gains for EXP and such, my eyes lit up as I spotted an alert for a new perk. Your skill at avoiding your enemies has granted you a new skill. Dodge passive level 1 to 0.00%, plus 15% effectiveness at avoiding enemy attacks. Huh, alright, I can definitely use something like that. I don't like getting hurt, and situations like against Nana would have been so much easier if I had been able to evade her attacks. Letting out a breath, I shook off the memory and began sorting through the assorted alerts. Alright, 9 killer rabbits and a screaming squirrel, coming to a total of 7,400 express and 5,900 Ryo with assorted crafting items. I really should learn a crafting skill, or bring them to Suguro. Taking a moment to gather myself mentally, I let out a sigh before relaxing my body and started forward again. It was strange though, I didn't encounter anything as I moved deeper, nor did I see any signs of habitation here, like the chakra mutations avoided the entire place, even though it looked like there was some decent vegetation here. My eyes snapped up as I caught sight of some movement, my entire body tensing as I waited with bated breath. When a small, normal-sized rabbit hopped out of the underbrush of a nearby cluster of trees, I let out a breath of relief. Well, hey there little guy, I called out, a small smile of relief on my face as I relaxed my guard a bit and stepped closer. What are you doing in here? Actually, how have you survived here? I didn't notice it as I walked forward, but the rabbit had frozen when I made myself known and began walking towards it. Its beady eyes watching my every movement as I got closer. I was about to lean over to pet the still rabbit, also check it for tags in case someone's pet had gotten lost, when all hell broke loose. The rabbit had suddenly vanished from my eyesight. Why did I ever turn my Sharingan off? Before something hit me in the gut with the force of a tour bus going to Fat Camp. Next thing I knew, I was having another lesson in flying before slamming into a tree with enough force to splinter the back. HP 952. What? Blinking, I tried to reorient myself and blinked again as all I saw was that same rabbit just hopping towards me, but this time there were letters floating above and in bold red text. Rabbit of Caerbannog, level 30. HP 3500. CP 1,500. Oh God, what has Konohagakure's founders wrought upon me this day? It was at this moment that I decided, when I meet Tobarama or Madara, whichever one of those bastards I came across first, I was going to kick them straight in the balls, with a chakra scalpel. Granted, they would likely be an impure resurrection zombie, but still, it's the principle of the matter. Wait, where did the rabbit go? Oh shit. I threw myself to the side just in time to avoid getting my face mauled by the demon rabbit as it tore through the tree that stopped my rabbit-induced flight like it wasn't even there. Getting to my feet, I quickly drew out my kodachi and started chakra flow, chakra scalpel on the blade as I tried to find the rabbit that was now hidden amongst the underbrush. I must never let Sakari ni-san find out I was being hunted by a rabbit. My danger senses flared as I tossed myself to the side again, this time catching sight of the rabbit as it tried to take a chunk of my head off and managed to graze its skin with my scalpel-empowered blade, only to find the chakra rebuffed by the rabbit's own. Seriously, what the is this rabbit? Throwing myself away to create more room, I leapt up onto one of the overhanging branches to try and get some distance between me and what could only be the boss of the Darkwood Forest. Observe, I panted out as I kept moving, keeping the rabbit in my line of sight as I moved. How is it tree running? Rabbit of caerbannog, level 30. HP 3500. CP 1500. Perks. Unassuming form. Its appearance belies its strength, making any who would approach its domain underestimate it. Superior chakra beast. This beast is the alpha predator of its environment. Because of its feeding on other chakra beasts, its chakra is unusually dense, allowing it to rebuff any chakra weaker than its own invading its body. Son of a mother. Okay, if I survive this, I am going to be training in more offensive jutsu than just my chakra scalpel, because this thing in front of me is bullshit. Sheathing my kodachi, I really need to learn how to do more one-handed seals. I began molding my chakra. Fire release. Phoenix Sage Fire. I called out as I exhaled a swarm of fireballs at the bouncing demon rabbit that was chasing after me. While the majority of them missed, I managed to land a few on him. A few twitches of my fingers and the shuriken hidden in the fireballs that went wide suddenly broke away from the flames and began spinning around to catch the rabbit in the nano wire tied to them. Then the rabbit decided to simply just bite through the wire. Wire that was able to have a fully grown man hanging from it with just a single strand. Bullshit, this thing is a rabbit. I shouted as I started running again, hurling chakra-infused kunai behind me as I moved. It has to be the Biju the sage told no one about. Growling, I drew out my kodachi again and started applying fire release, chakra flow onto it before doubling back to the rabbit. Thankfully, my sudden change in direction managed to catch it between leaps and I managed to get in a burning slash across its flank. Dear Cammy, it's hard to hit a normal-sized rabbit with a sword when it's moving. Not stopping to see what damage I caused to it, I continued to run. Thankfully, I seemed to be faster than the rabbit at this point. Oh hey, the forest is on fire. Wait, oh right, fire plus trees makes more fire, doesn't it? A fire I was heading straight for, with a demon rabbit at my back that is most likely pissed off that I injured it. Cammy, why do you hate me so? Gritting my teeth, I altered my path. Sheathing my kodachi, I slammed my foot against a branch with as much force as I could muster to send me flying from my path at a 90-degree angle before turning around mid-air as I completed a set of hand seals. In for a penny, in for a pound. Fire release. Great fireball. I shouted at the top of my lungs as I pumped more chakra than what was required into the jutsu. Thankfully, the rabbit had indeed been following my every move as I exhaled a fireball easily twice my own size directly into the demon's face. I could only stare as the fireball continued a good ways before it suddenly exploded. It normally doesn't do that. Going to have to check my alerts later. Unfortunately for me, the rabbit blurred out of the conflagration and somehow managed to convey a feeling of absolute rage at me. Was this real bloodlust I was feeling? Well damn. Rabbit of caerbannog, level 30. HP 2145. CP 1034. Alright, I'm doing damage to it, that's the good news. Bad news, it was now ricocheting itself of the trees as around me, doing a damn good impression of Rock Lee when he fought Gaara. I let out a cough of pain as the rabbit slammed into my back, shaving off the better part of nearly 500 HP before I managed to get his pattern down enough to start avoiding his attacks. I was starting to get used to his speed, my Sharingan getting better at predicting its movements as I managed to start counterattacking. It was a battle of attrition at this point as I caught its side with my kodachi again while it managed to trip me up, slamming me into the ground and shaving off another 135 hit points. But, with the rate its CP was dropping, it had to have been using some kind of technique to increase its speed. All I needed to do was survive until it ran out of chakra. Then, hopefully, it would be helpless to resist my offense. When it finally happened, I nearly let out a shout of joy as it pushed me below 200 HP, the rabbit suddenly coming to a halt as it dropped to the ground, the area around us a mess of broken trees, scorched ground and all-around destruction. Alright, you little bastard, time for revenge, I growled as I applied chakra flow, chakra scalpel, to my kodachi. Let's see you repulse my chakra when you don't have any of your own. It wasn't making my revenge easy, that's for sure, as it used its own natural evasiveness to avoid my attacks as I chased after it. Using a clever little trick of rebounding kunai, I managed to drive it into one of my strikes that cut its rear leg's hamstring. The beast toppled to the ground, unable to keep going with its legs so badly injured. 3 times, I've nearly died 3 times since I've arrived, I panted, a kind of giddy rage filling me as I stared at the helpless beast. Now, I am getting revenge for it. I formed the hand seals I needed to finish the beast off. Now burn, fire release. Great fireball. I shouted as I released the flamethrower onto the beast, keeping the fire going until I almost depleted all of my chakra. Not a bad first attempt, my father commented approvingly as he watched my efforts. Your experience with the fire release chakra flow is definitely showing, but a leaf isn't as sensitive to the different elements as chakra metal, he explained calmly as he took a new leaf down to replace with my dried out one. So when you mold your chakra into the fire element, you need to make it more intense than normal in order to actually catch the leaf aflame. When you mold your chakra, try and keep the image of an intense fire inside of your mind to help you focus on it. Accepting the leaf, I took in a calming breath before closing my eyes. Repeating my actions, I channeled the chakra into the leaf before I started molding it again, this time remembering the flames I released against the rabbit. Gritting my teeth as I focus, I could feel my chakra shifting before I felt something briefly burn my fingers, pulling a yelp from me as I let go of the now burning leaf and shook my hands to try and cool them to my father's amusement. That's the way, he cheered, clapping his hands. That's exactly how you do fire manipulation. Your hard work has rewarded you with a new skill. Fire nature manipulation, passive, level 1 to 0.00%, plus 10% effectiveness to fire ninjutsu. Yes, I shouted as the new skill window popped up in front of me, laughing a bit in my excitement, making my father chuckle my excitement. Want to try it with water now? He asked me with a raised eyebrow, holding out a leaf in a challenging manner. I won't be able to give you an example this time. You know it, I'll get it down in no time. I shouted as I snatched the leaf, riding the high of getting fire nature manipulation down. Once I was settled, I took some more calming breaths to center myself as I started channeling my chakra into the leaf. It was tough at first, trying to get it down while holding the image of water in my head, specifically a memory of swimming in the lake near the compound with my brother. And I could feel something happening with the leaf, and my chakra did feel like it was flowing differently. A liquidy feeling on my hands broke my concentration as I opened my eyes to see the leaf had split open and was gushing out water from the split. That's not what's supposed to happen, is it? I questioned as I looked up to my father, who shook his head in response. No, the leaf is supposed to be dry when you have completed the exercise, he informed me gently. Instead of pushing the element in, you need to pull it out. Nodding, I accepted the new leaf before closing my eyes and concentrating again. I changed my method this time. Instead of pushing as much chakra as I could into it, I only push a little in to connect my chakra to the leaf and experimentally tried pushing the water inside of it around. I jolted when my father tapped me on the shoulder to bring awareness to the fact that part of the leaf had been broken. Accepting the new leaf, I restarted the process. My father, bless his heart, was a very patient man because it took me nearly an hour and a pile of leaves to finally get the exercise down enough for a pop-up to appear before me. Your hard work has rewarded you with a new skill. Water nature manipulation, passive, level 1 to 0.00%, plus 10% effectiveness to water ninjutsu. Finally, I shouted as I flopped back onto the grass. My word, that was hard. I'm not surprised by that, my father informed me, a small grin on his face as he took a seat beside me, crossing his legs comfortably as he looked down at me. From what I've learned when studying nature manipulation, those who have opposing affinities like yours will have a hard time learning how to manipulate the opposite one after learning the first due to how different it is and the conflicting nature of it. Humming, I thought about what he told me. So if I had, say, an earth alignment rather than water, then it would have been easier. I questioned, looking up at him. From what I can tell, yes, he confirmed with a nod, smiling at me. But now that you have the feeling of it, you shouldn't have as much trouble with it, and once you master them, I'm sure you can use them in ways that even the Sandame could only dream of. Giggling at the thought, I grinned widely before leaping to my feet. Well then, only one way to master them then, I shouted, a fire burning inside of me. Time to start training. My father laughed at my enthusiasm, looking like he digged a few years as he relaxed with me, coaching me with my attempts at manipulating the elemental chakra, even explaining how to do the other nature manipulation exercises as I focused on my training. It was nice spending time with my father. While he didn't have my brother's teasing attitude or my mother's inner fire, he was like a solid rock that had soaked up the sun's heat. A strange approximation, I know, but it was the only way I could think of to describe him. He was patient with me, explaining in depth anything I asked him, showed me little tricks that made chakra manipulation easier, and even helped advance my intermediate kenjutsu to advanced uchiha style kenjutsu. When I had completed the quest at the end of our training time together, he handed a pair of scrolls to me. Fire Release, Blazing Skull, and Water Release, Water Mantle, which ended up reminding me I wanted to learn the Inari Rabbit Jutsu, which in turn reminded me of the stat points I needed to distribute, causing my father to laugh as I ranted about forgetting something so basic. Once my points were allocated, all 15 points going into Dex, I was still short by a single point, making my father laugh even harder as I started cursing like a sailor. Once I was finished ranting, he watched as I learned the two ninjutsus, asking me some questions about the process and how much I knew about the jutsus without looking at the skill sheet. From there, we re-entered the house to start making dinner and started talking about simpler things. That night was one of the fondest memories I hold of my father, and it tore me up when a week before I was to be released from my medical leave, a week after he left, my mother came home with a haunted look on her face, reporting that he had been during battle. As always, time moved on. I redeployed as a chunin of Kanahagakure. Unfortunately, it was not to link up with my teammates, but with my mother to a different front that needed more medical support to deal with the number of injured that was overwhelming the current medics there. The Sandame had given me a certificate declaring my advancement to medic, 2nd grade, at the same time as my chunin vest, telling me that I earned it with my actions during the Battle of Tensai Bridge. I ended up remaining at that front where we were supporting Sunagakure Shinobi against Kurigakure for the next 2 years. Hell, it took my mother telling me it was my birthday the second year to realize I had been there a year. It was a blur, my memories sometimes resolving in a medical tent, shouting for another medic to support me as I tried to stop a man from bleeding out from an artery. Another memory was cutting my way through what could only be a Hazuka clan member with my chakra flow, chakra scalpel, blood sprayed all over my body. Thankfully, I had rejoined with my team on that front. Hisai sensei was the same as ever. Chika-chan was quieter than normal and had a tendency to shake in fear when the earth shook for any reason. Aoi-kun was more determined than ever, becoming more vicious when he engaged the enemy. I knew I changed as well. It was a subtle thing and shook me to my core when I just stopped caring about the injuries I inflicted onto the people I fought. It no longer disgusted me like it once had when I shredded a man's lungs and left him gasping for breath. I was nearly hysterical when I realized this. It took both my mother and Hisai sensei an hour to calm me down and a month of being restricted to the medical ward before I was able to enter the battlefield again without shaking. That was when I first met Minato Namikaze, the father of Naruto and future Yondaime Hokage. We had been hearing rumors of a possible ceasefire being called with Iwa, something that was supported by a lack of Iwagakure shinobi appearing on the field, and was later confirmed as Minato-san walked into the base we shared with Sunagakure. Looking for me. I'm sorry, Minato-san, but you want me to be a part of the escort for Sandame-sama? I questioned the blonde man with an incredulous look. But, why? I'm not even 10 and I'm only a chunin. Minato-san smiled at me in response, looking completely at ease. Simple. You are 9 years old, and a chunin, he replied simply. Plus you have been making a name for yourself out here, sword scalpel, yuriko. I scowled a bit at the name, but it was nicer than what the enemy had been calling me. Bloody scalpel. Can't say they're wrong with it though. Stupid overblown reputation, I muttered to myself, drawing a chuckle from Minato-san. Indeed, they are troubling things, he said knowingly. Alright, I will call the yellow flash, the massacre flash. Suddenly my own didn't sound so bad. Letting out a sigh, I sagged a bit, feeling the weight of my chunin vest weigh down upon me. Understood. When will we be leaving then? I questioned, snapping at attention after brushing my now waist-length hair over my shoulder. The last person to try and grab it when they had gotten close ended up being castrated with my chakra scalpel. A lot of people avoided going for it since then. Minato smiled wider in response. As soon as you're ready, he replied. Get whatever you feel you may need and meet me back here. I nodded before turning on my heel and marching out of the command building and into the heat of the Sunagakur desert. Well, more accurately the edge of the desert, but still it was bloody hot during the day and freezing at night. Upside to being here for 2 years. I was no longer pale as like most uchiha. I now had a healthy tan going on, once I recovered from my sunburn that is anyways, thank you Iriojutsu. Twitching my lip at that though I glanced at myself in the mirror. I gave myself a once-over to make sure I looked professional enough. The subtle signs of curves my new cup bra reminded me of one of my more clear memories happening about a year ago when I had woken up with the worst stomach cramp of my life and bleeding between my legs. Thank God for my shinobi discipline enforcing itself, allowing me to get out of my bed and wake my mother without causing a massive ruckus, but I spent the entire time screaming my head off mentally, and vocally once I had an area sealed off with a silencing seal. Thankfully, for professionalism's sake, my period had just passed for the month, so I should be free and clear for another few weeks. Not that I would have let it affect me anyways, thanks to some of the tricks mom showed me when helping me clean myself up. My outfit mostly remained the same, although I was wearing my chunin vest rather than my jacket for the extra protection and had added a pair of armguards with reinforcement seals for that same purpose. Making some minute adjustments to my hair, my mother insisted I not cut it shorter than it was now since it looked good on me. I turned away from the window and approached my office, which really was just a bunk and desk in the medical ward with some privacy curtains hung up. I was basically second in command of the medics at this point, my mother being the only one actually outranking me as Jonin medics were in short supply, and let me tell you something, nothing like being put into the hot plate to make you learn fast because half a year in I mastered mystical palm, and was well versed in performing surgeries, both on and off the field. Hey mom, I'm getting redeployed, I informed as I entered the tent, getting my mom to look up from where she was doing an inventory check. We were never not busy in here. Minato-san told me Sandame-sama wants me a part of his escort. The owlish blink from my mom looked rather weird considering she had her Sharingan active at the time. It was surprising how useful it was for doing inventory counts. He wants you to be a part of the escort? She questioned in the exact same tone I had when questioning my orders. That's what I asked, but apparently having sword scalpel Yuriko around as their medic for the escort is a message of some kind, I replied as I headed for my office, stepping through the occupied beds. Just like we were never not busy, the beds were never not full, the shinobi in the beds not even bothering to hide their eavesdropping of the conversation. We were all insatiable gossips. We're deploying as soon as I'm ready. My mother sighed as she passed her clipboard to the assistant medic helping her with the counts before joining me in my office. Are you stocked up on kunai and shuriken? She questioned as she helped me gather my pack together, allowing me to gear myself up, starting like always with sliding Tasuki no Usagi into the holster on my right leg. Plenty to spare, I assured with a grin as I pulled on my armguard, testing the fit to see if they needed to be adjusted again, 3 times in this past month alone, before grabbing my equipment pouch and sliding it into place. I need more shampoo though, why won't you let me cut my hair shorter already? My mother gave me the look all mothers had. Because you look best with long hair, she told me primly as she placed a new bottle of shampoo in the bag she was packing. And uchiha kunoichi always look their best. I sighed and rolled my eyes at her argument, one I heard 1,000 times by now, before testing the draw on Tasuki no Usagi. Fine, fine, but you get to buy my shampoo from now on, I grumbled, glaring at her a bit as she smirked in victory. Oh, don't lie to yourself, dear, you like it as much as I do. I've seen how much extra time you spend on your hair when you can, she told me knowingly. I blushed at being caught. In truth, I actually did like my hair the length it was at, and spending the extra time I could get brushing it relaxed me more than simply sleeping could. Status, I murmured, desperate to change the subject and put my sniggering mother out of mind. Nodding to myself, I closed the window and double-checked my skills and perks before letting out a sigh and rolling my shoulders, only to freeze as my mother put her hands on them, kneading the tension out of my shoulders gently. It's all right, she whispered to me, placing her forehead on top of my scalp. Even with my growth spurt, I was still only 4 feet 8 to my mom's 5 feet 4 inches. Your father would be so proud of you right now, she told me, her voice thick with emotion, my eyes prickling with tears at the memory of his brief funeral where his name was added to the memorial stone. I miss him, I admitted in a small voice, weaker than I cared to admit. So do I, but he remains with us, my mother reminded me, patting my chest. He always will be proud of you, so do your best and come back home, all right? Yeah, I nodded, wiping my tear away with the back of my hands and straightened myself as Mom pulled away. I'll come back for sure. My mother smirked, the Uchiha smirk. It really is trademarked, I checked, at me before patting my shoulder and handing my bag. And I will be waiting, now go, don't keep Minato-san waiting. Nodding, I pulled the bag onto my back and shared another brief hug with my mom and left the tent to head back to the command post. Minato-san, I am ready, I announced as I stepped into the building at a parade rest, legs shoulder width apart and hands clasped at my lower back. Minato looked up as I spoke, giving me a once-over before nodding approvingly and stepped up. All right then, he announced, placing a hand on my shoulder, making me raise an eyebrow. Why is he? As sensei would say, clench your butt. The next thing I knew, the world was turned upside down and became yellow. I collapsed to my knees as my vision swam, my stomach rebelling as I tried to comprehend what just happened. A deep laugh made me look up to see an apologetic-looking Minato-san with an amused-looking Sandaime-sama and a white-haired man with 2 red trails under his eyes clutching his sides as he guffawed in laughter. Sorry about that, Minato-san said in sympathy. It should pass soon. Hiraishin is hard on everyone the first time experiencing it. That was the Hiraishin? I questioned incredulously, voicing my shock. I felt like I was just tossed out of a window buck. My words only made who could only be Jiraiya-sama laugh even harder as Sandaime-sama chuckled a bit. Don't think I've heard someone describe it quite like that before, Minato admitted as he fought a grin of his own. I grumbled a bit as my stomach settled and my vision returned to normal soon enough and I was back on my feet like it never happened. I apologize for my rude behavior, Hokage-sama, I said, addressing the village leader who merely waved it off. Quite all right, Yuriko-chan, he assured, smiling kindly at me. Thank you for agreeing to come with me today. Not like I could say no to an order, I snarked mentally. Of course, Hokage-sama, I said vocally. May I assume the idiot laughing over there is Jiraiya-sama? That got a snort from Minato as Jiraiya froze, a betrayed look on his face. Indeed so, Yuriko-chan, this is my student, Jiraiya, he said in introduction, amusement tinging his tone as he looked to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, this is Yuriko Uchiha, our medic for the trip. Jiraiya grumbled a bit in response as he righted himself, adjusting the older-styled flak jacket he was wearing before facing me properly with an appraising eye. By Kami, you just can't appreciate how large this man is until you're right beside him in real life. Pleased to meet ya, he said finally as he extended a hand. I hear you're toting an unusual skill set, fuinjutsu, ninjutsu, iriojutsu and kenjutsu. Doesn't quite seem balanced on paper if you ask me. I accepted his hand, marveling as his seemed to engulf my own. I make it work somehow, Jiraiya-sama, I said in response, shrugging off his comment. He was curious, not insulting like some I had met until they saw me in combat. I guess all it takes is some ingenuity and thinking outside of the box. Jiraiya let out a bark of laughter in response. A shinobi after my own heart, he declared cheerfully. Now that introductions are out of the way, Sandaime-sama said, clearing his throat, the three of us coming to attention in an instant as he stood up from his desk. I blush a bit as I only just now realized he was clad in his combat uniform. Shall we be on our way to Tetsu no Kuni? Huh, so the peace talks are being held by the samurai. Smart. Of course, Hokage-sama, was all I said as I bowed, Jiraiya chuckling at my formality. Very well then, Sandaime-sama said as he headed for the door, the three of us falling into step beside him easily. We left the village with very little fanfare, just a short conference with who could only be Homura-san and Kaharu-san with Sandaime-sama giving them explicit instructions before we headed out the gate, quickly taking to the trees. I got appreciative looks from them as I managed to keep pace with them through the trees. Thankfully I didn't need to use the Inaba rabbit jutsu like I had thought I would have to keep up with them. Soon enough chatter started up with Minato-san and Jiraiya-sama questioning me about my fuinjutsu skills, with me admitting that I mostly used it in a support role with enhancing my clothing with seals to provide passive benefits. My chakra control seal seemed to really catch the interest of Jiraiya as he asked to see it when we stopped for the night. Apparently the seal, while referenced, was really hard to come by. We ended up stopping an hour before dusk, giving us plenty of time to set out camp up and get our meal cooking. Yuriko-san, would you mind having a spar with me? Minato-san questioned politely once our tents were set up and a fire was going. Ah, with me Minato-san? I questioned, looking lost. I don't think I would be much of a challenge for you. Minato-san shook his head in response, an encouraging smile on his face in response. Nothing like that, he informed me. I just wish to see your skill set in combat. It's one thing to talk and read about it, another thing entirely to see it in person. Swallowing tightly I nodded, prompting the mission acceptance. Right then, let's do this I guess. I said nervously as I stood up and moved a few feet away from Minato-san and got myself into a ready position, my kodachi in hand as my chakra flow, chakra scalpel activated seamlessly and voicelessly. No way in hell will I be able to survive a minute with the yellow flash if I held back. Alright, this match will be over when one hits the ground with both shoulders or I call it over, Jiraiya-sama announced in a serious tone as he pulled out a kunai. You may begin when this kunai hits the ground. Taking a breath I calmed myself as the toad Sanin threw the kunai into the air lazily. I got into my modified stance of the Uchiha Kenjutsu, my kodachi held in a reverse grip while held behind me, my knees bent bringing me low to the ground and ready to leap in any direction. Minato-san meanwhile stood in a relaxed pose, one of his signature tri-pronged kunai in his hand held in a reverse grip. My Sharingan activated as the kunai hit the ground, granting me just enough perception to see Minato-san as he blurred forward. Even without Hiroshin the man was blindingly fast. Chakra rushed to my legs as I activated the 5-hand-sealed Inaba rabbit jutsu without a single one or voicing it to rush myself back. Minato-san was certainly not expecting me to come close to matching his speed if his widened eyes were any indication as I rebounded off of a tree, tearing a good chunk of it off from the tree as I launched towards Minato-san with a slash of my kodachi. Just as I was about to hit his flak vest with the tip of my blade he vanished with only a few yellow spots being any indication that he had even been there. My instincts flared a warning at me, forcing me to grab the ground to adjust my position just enough to allow a tri-pronged kunai to sail past me from above. The next second Minato-san was right in front of me, gripping the kunai in his hand with what could only be a Rasengan in his free hand. Reacting, I threw my foot at the wrist of the hand holding the Rasengan, knocking it out of the way while my own free hand reached to grab his jacket only for my hand to close on empty air as he vanished again. I rolled myself mid-air out of desperation to try and spot Minato-san, then out of any instinctual feeling, barely avoiding a trio of Minato-san's kunai in the process as my feet touched the ground. Taking advantage of it, I threw myself forward in an Inaba rabbit-powered sprint. A small explosion behind me told me that was the best move I could have made in that moment. Coming to a stop, I spun around as I planted my back against a tree, spotting Minato-san watching me as a cloud of dust cleared away from the small indent in the ground that could have only been made by a Rasengan. Sweat dripped down my face as I panted. How long has it been since we started? Is this what facing a cage-level opponent felt like? I hope didn't crap my pants. Gritting my teeth, I froze my thoughts in their place and focused on Minato-san as he retook his position. I can't let myself get distracted now, do or be in pain time. I acted, a tiger seal in front of my face as I inhaled before releasing a fire release. Great fireball without warning, not the best one I've released, but still 4 feet in diameter easily. I didn't wait to see if it hit or not, I simply began charging after the fireball, and swung my kodachi. My first technique created with chakra flow, chakra scalpel. Chakra flow, chakra scalpel, straight cut. The premise was simple: extend the flow of chakra with the swing, working on the same principle as Asuma Sarutobi's Hien technique to extend the range with his knives. I did the same for a single swing. At 5 feet, my slash cut through my own fireball, dispersing the flames as the form was disrupted, only on problem. Minato-san wasn't there anymore. I did the only thing I could think of and threw myself to the side. Not once did I let up on sending chakra to the Inaba rabbit jutsu, which quite honestly saved me, as had I been 1 second slower I was quite certain whatever jutsu Minato-san fired off that sent a lightning bolt tearing through the clearing would have hurt badly. I traced the jutsu back to its origin point only to find no one there. Catching a flash in the corner of my eye, I blinked in confusion as Minato-san teleported directly in front of his own jutsu. My eyes widened as I saw him complete a set of seals and held his tri-pronged kunai before him just as his jutsu reached him, and vanished. I paled as a crackling was heard behind me. Turning my head, I barely caught sight of the jutsu behind me before it slammed into me, my mind blanking out a bit as electricity surged within and before collapsing as it ended. It's over. Jiraiya-sama shouted, ending the match as I blinked several times. Twitching a bit, I tried to process what just happened. Holy, I said finally as I regained control of my body. Jiraiya-sama chuckled in response as he helped me sit up, patting my back. That's exactly what I said when we sparred after he learned the Hiraishin, he admitted. All said and done though, good hustle out there. How were you moving so quickly? I had found a scroll for the Inaba rabbit jutsu a couple of years ago, I admitted with a blush. I practiced with it until I could do it without using seals. Oh ho, haven't heard that jutsu name in quite a few years, Sandaime-sama said with a nostalgic look. Where did you find it if I may ask? The Blackwoods training ground, I admitted. Found it on the demonic rabbit that was in there. Demonic rabbit? Minato-san questioned with a raised eyebrow. Ah, it was in the center of the field, I explained with flush. I managed to it, but it was a nasty little beast and I think it somehow learned the jutsu itself because he was moving as fast as I do when using it. Sandaime-sama hummed in response as he nodded in contemplation. Ah yes, the chakra mutations, he said after a few moments. Have you been into any of the other ones? Haven't had the chance with being deployed, I admitted with a blush as I began healing up the damage I accrued during our short fight. Plus I wanted to get more experience before going into the next one. Commendable, Minato-san said approvingly, a smile on his face. I must say though, your skills are impressive for one your age. Ah, I'm not much, I denied reflexively, trying to hide my darkening blush in the collar of my Chunin vest, getting chuckles from the 3 men around the fire, glancing at the quest completion alert from the corner of my eye. Holy crap, that was only a minute and a half. What are you looking at, Yuriko-san? Minato-san prompted gently, his blue eye kind as he looked at me observantly. I froze in place, unsure on what to say to hide the answer without arousing their suspicion. She was definitely reading something earlier as well. Jiraiya-sama pitched in easily, his entire body relaxed, my stomach twisted in fear. It's all right, Yuriko-chan, Sandame-sama's voice cut through my approaching panic attack like a knife. You can tell us. Turning my head towards them, I shyly glanced at their welcoming faces before letting out a heavy sigh. Might be easier just to show you, I said finally. Invite Minato Namikaze, Jiraiya and Hiruzen Sarutobi to party. All three blinked as the boxes appeared in front of them, questioning them if they wanted to accept my invite. Glancing at each other, they confirmed they each had one in front of them. My power, I call it, the gamer, because, well, it makes things look like they were a game to me, I explained in a small voice. I get quest pop-ups when things happen sometimes, like when Minato-san asked me to spar with him. The condition was that I had to last a minute against him with a bonus reward for every extra 30 seconds I lasted. I swallowed as I chanced another look at the trio of the most powerful Konoha ninja seated near me and found them examining the boxes with a curious look. And you are able to relate this power to others by inviting them? Sandame-sama questioned with a raised eyebrow. Only in part, I elaborated, biting my lip. I experimented with my mom while we were deployed together. When we're in a party, I can track their position, health, and chakra pool as well as their current status, but while I get stat points to distribute as I wish upon leveling up, others don't. Instead, theirs is distributed automatically. I'm not quite sure how they are distributed though, but it will allow you to take a look at your own stats, perks, and skills. How would I do that? Minato-san questioned as he accepted the invite, his name appearing in the corner of my eye with a level beside his name along with his HP and CP totals. Holy crap, he is level 89. Just say status, skills, or perks respectively, I answered, slowly feeling more confident as I spoke with them. Sandame-sama's and Jiraiya-sama's names appeared alongside his shortly after, their levels being 90 and 88 respectively. My god, these three were monsters. Fascinating, Sandame-sama mused as he began looking through what must have been a massive skill page. I take it these levels would relate to our level of mastery with a jutsu. I nodded in confirmation. Yes, and I recently learned I couldn't start dropping seals for my jutsus until around level 50 with the option to drop another seal every 10 levels after that, but it would reduce the power of the jutsu if I do that. I rambled a bit as I talked. I only maxed out a few like chakra scalpel, because I used them so much and am really comfortable with them. Relax, kid, Jiraiya-sama rumbled comfortingly, smiling at me reassuringly. What else is it capable of doing with a party, was it? Oh, I can set up a communication network with anyone in the party, I informed, relaxing a bit. It only has a range up to about 2.5 miles though, and it would look like you're talking to yourself. Still handy, Minato-san said approvingly. I can see why you would be nervous about revealing this, the possibilities are almost endless. I blushed as I nodded slowly. I didn't want to be put into a room or something, I mumbled out, shrinking in on myself a bit. I was afraid that people would try and get the power for themselves somehow, or try and breed me to get more people with access. I'm not even sure if any kids I have would get it. I don't even know where it came from. Well, not for certain anyways. You have a theory? Minato-san questioned gently, raising an eyebrow. Well, when I had a dream. Vision. I'm not sure, but something was talking to me through the boxes. I told them, using a partial truth, reincarnation was one can of worms I didn't want to open. From the tone of it, I guess I'm just amusement for them or something. The three adults shared a serious look. Danzo would do a lot to try and get his hands on her if he knew, Jiraiya-sama commented with a grim tone, making Sandame-sama flinch a bit in response. He would, unfortunately, he sighed heavily. Minato, Jiraiya, this is an S-class secret, he announced after a moment, making me blink as I looked up. Never say a word of this to anyone else, I will not either. To everyone else, Yuriko-chan here is just another splendid shinobi of Konohagakure. I stared, slack-jawed at Sandaime-sama as the other two shinobi nodded in agreement. Why you would do that, for me? I asked quietly, still in shock. Of course, Sandaime-sama assured me with a warm smile. You are a member of Konohagakure's shinobi corps, and one with such potential, I will protect your freedom as I would any other. I sniffled as I tried to stem the tears welling up in my eyes, trying to wipe them away with the palm of my hands. Thank you, Hokage-sama, I managed to choke out, an arm dropping around my shoulders comfortingly as Minato-san sat down beside me. Of course, Yuriko-chan, it was all he needed to say in order for the tears to start flowing freely in relief. Cool. Following that, I began talking with Jiraiya-sama about the different seals I used on my clothing once I was able to get my skills to a high enough level to use them correctly. Even taking my jacket out of my inventory, to both show them how it worked and to show the seal work to Jiraiya-sama, who took down some notes on it. As he was doing that, I was questioning Minato-san on his Hiraishin Jutsu, eagerly absorbing everything that he was telling me about it, and from the way he was talking it was like some kind of hybridization of a wormhole and dematerialization. A lot of the details went completely over my head, but I was able to glean a few useful insights, especially with the markers, and his awareness of their presence. That had led to me suggesting a seal that could be used to mark a shinobi's position that is then relayed to a map allowing for real-time update on allied troop positions. Sandaime-sama had to raise his voice to break the three of us out of our discussion on how best to implement it to get us back on the road and moving, though he did take our distraction in good humor. It was a surreal experience for me, a 9-year-old chunin, to be treated as an equal by these three powerful shinobi, being asked for my opinion on current events, my view on how certain jutsus would work best in combination with other jutsus. Surreal, but an experience I wouldn't trade for the world, as I remember laughing so hard at a story Minato-san told me about some of his earlier adventures with Jiraiya-sama and his old teammates that I ended up slipping off a branch and face-planting on the ground. It took us a week, but soon enough we approached the border to Tetsu no Kuni, the air getting chiller, prompting us to don the specially made all-weather cloaks that used a tiny bit of our chakra to warm our bodies. I made a mental note to copy the seals onto my clothing aloud, to the amusement of Jiraiya-sama, who asked if I was planning wearing more seals than clothing. My first meeting with the samurai of Tetsu no Kuni was actually fairly unremarkable. We simply walked up to the border office, stated our names, affiliation and purpose within Tetsu no Kuni before being allowed entrance with a single samurai escort, who was pretty damn quick, able to lead us up to the capital of the country where the meeting was to take place. As we entered the city, I wasn't able to help myself as I looked around at the various buildings and shops that dominated the main street. Minato-san chuckled as he patted my head, causing me to attempt to hide my blush in the high collar of my cloak. Why did I get rid of my face mask? It was so much easier to hide my embarrassment with it on. We were escorted to the hotel we were assigned. Apparently the Tsuchikage's delegation was on the opposite side of the city to ensure there would be no trouble before the meeting. Alright, now that we are here, we can talk about your roles, Sandaime-sama announced as we got comfortable in the lounge of the diplomat suite. Minato, you are attending as my successor, and hopefully, deterrent to prevent Onoki from trying something foolish, he informed Minato, who nodded in understanding. Jiraiya, Yuriko-chan, you both are here as our bodyguards. I suspect you won't be needed, but better safe than sorry. Jiraiya-sama patted me on the back when I swallowed nervously. Relax, kiddo, we wouldn't have brought you along if we didn't think you can handle it, he assured me with a wide grin. Besides, you managed to do pretty well against Minato when he wasn't holding back very much against you. If it does come down to it, you'll be fine. Swallowing again, I took in some of the confidence he was showing in me and nodded firmly, my eyes hardening as I mentally prepared myself for the talks tomorrow. Right, I vocalized with a heavy breath. I can do this. Good to know, Minato-san said as he ruffled my hair, garnering a squawk of indignation from me. I'll be counting on your support then. Oh man, how is it he is able to make me blush so easily? I sent a glare to Jiraiya-sama, who was chuckling in amusement at the sight of me blushing, and, being the mature and professional 9-year-old chunin I was, I chucked a throw pillow at his face. And thus the great pillow war of Tetsu no Kuni began, Minato-san siding with me against his evil teacher as Sandaime-sama showed his true age by coming to the aid of his beleaguered student. It wasn't until I had curled up in bed with a wide smile on my face that I realized what the trio were doing. They were helping me heal. For 2 years I had been for fighting and healing without stop, combat-rated medics being an extremely rare thing for Konoha, and being one of the few around, a lot of expectations had been placed on me, whether consciously or unconsciously. My mother, bless her heart, tried her best to help me, but she was under the same burden as I was, and grieving her lost husband while helping her daughter grieve her lost father. My mother was a strong woman, no ifs, ands, or buts. The next morning was a solemn affair. There were no funny stories, no jokes. We each went through our morning rituals before getting dressed in our proper full uniforms, ensuring that every crease was in its proper place. Sandaime-sama gave us each a scrutinizing look as he assembled before him at the door to the hotel room. Looking pleased by what he saw, he gave us an approving nod and stepped out, greeting our escort politely and allowing the samurai to lead us to the main hall. My position was to be behind Minato-san's left shoulder while he sat beside Sandaime-sama, Jiraiya-sama standing behind his teacher's right shoulder. As we entered the main hall, we found the Tsuchikage's delegation waiting for us, with only the Tsuchikage looking familiar to me. I resisted the urge to activate my Sharingan, Minato-san having explained that the samurai could see it as an act of aggression since we are able to cast genjutsu through eye contact with the Sharingan active. That urge became even harder to resist when the Tsuchikage spoke up. Are you so desperate for soldiers that you're bringing a kid as one of your bodyguards, Hiruzen? Onoki growled as he sneered at me. Hardly, Sandaime-sama retorted with a small grin. I brought her along because she is a highly capable kunoichi, although I am certain you already knew that given the bounty you put on her head. I had a bounty on me. It took every inch of my willpower to restrain the urge to gawk at the revelation that I had a bounty, and managed to suppress it to a twitch on my hand, both of which were clasped behind my back. Huh, that would explain why the people targeting me in battle increased at least. Onoki snarled as Sandaime-sama turned his attempted insult back into his face while an elderly-looking man took a seat between the two groups. If you two are done bickering, may we get down to business? He requested, sounding as if we was sitting on a beach rather than between two groups of shinobi ready to rip each other apart. You go badass old man. The meeting itself was actually, all said and done, a rather boring affair as the two village leaders argued back and forth on who gets what, who pays that, how much X is worth. Although it was fun seeing Sandaime-sama turn every one of Onoki's barbs against him, and I think I did a great job of keeping myself professional like Minato-san, and not like Jiraiya-sama who was hurling insults of his own back at Onoki whenever the man would start getting obstinate, which was often. Finally, after nearly 12 hours of nearly uninterrupted arguing, pausing only for a few breaks along with lunch and dinner, the ceasefire was signed and both sides were getting ready to leave. That was when Onoki deigned to address me again. I look forward to the day your head lands on my desk, Uchiha brat, he growled to me, obviously trying to intimidate me and slight Sandaime-sama for bringing someone, weak, to negotiations. I'll enjoy gouging your eyes out for my shinobi even more. Glancing at Hokage-sama out of the corner of my eyes, he nodded, giving me the go-ahead to speak for myself. I turned to the Tsuchikage and have him the sweetest smile I could muster. And I look forward to castrating each and every one of the assassins you send after me, bronzing their balls, and then having them delivered to you, I replied in my best, childlike, voice as I clapped my hands together. You can start a collection with them. The room was silent for a moment before Jiraiya-sama started belting out in laughter, clapping me on the shoulder in approval as he bent over, the Tsuchikage sputtering in rage as his guards started to hurriedly escort him out of the room before he decides to attack me and anger the samurai. Kid, you are my hero. Jiraiya-sama announced as he gasped for air between chuckles. Did you see the fence-sitter's face as he tried to process what you just said? Minato-san was much more restrained as he simply chuckled a bit, patting my shoulder as we headed towards the exit that would lead to our hotel. Well done, Yuriko-chan, he told me approvingly. Not many would be willing to risk the Tsuchikage's wrath like that. I flushed in response, ducking my head as I tried to lift the collar of my flak vest to cover my cheeks. I was only able to do so because you all were here, I managed to mumble out, what was wrong with me? I never had this much trouble speaking with someone before. All the same, Yuriko-chan, you managed to keep your calm before a superior shinobi as he tried to make you lose your cool and turned it back against him. Masterfully done, Sandaime-sama said approvingly. Although, in the future I would recommend using less crass language, it is ill-becoming of a lady to speak like that after all. My blush deepened as my head dipped in acknowledgement. Yes, Hokage-sama, I replied in an embarrassed voice. Shall we get some rest? It is going to be a long journey home, after all, Sandaime-sama suggested as we approached our hotel. But at least we return with good news this time. The journey back home to Konohagakure was as enjoyable as the trip to Tetsu no Kuni. I was especially surprised when all three of them started teaching me little tricks here and there, like Jiraiya-sama showing me how to increase the power of an explosive note with just a couple of brush strokes. Minato-san showed me how to compress my seals, making them smaller without losing any of their effectiveness, and Sandaime-sama was a treasure trove of ninjutsu tips and tricks. He even helped me get started on the second stage of nature manipulation training for both fire and water. Setting a rock on fire and reversing the direction of a stream, respectively. Unlike our trip out, however, our return was greeted with a large amount of fanfare as the news of the ceasefire spread and many of the shinobi began to return back home. It was strange, standing between Minato-san and Jiraiya-sama behind Sandaime-sama as we walked down Main Street to the Hokage Tower for the debrief. I was pretty sure many people didn't notice me, considering just who was standing around me, but I did notice a few uchiha in the crowd point me out to their fellows and call out my name, prompting me to wave nervously in return. Soon enough we were in the meeting hall of the Hokage Tower. I was directed to stand beside Minato-san for the meeting instead of being told to wait outside like I assumed was going to happen. We then proceeded to give our report to the assembled clan heads, Fugaku-sama giving me a speculative look as I stood beside the future Yondaime, and reported on our gains and losses as a result of the treaty signed. Questions were raised and answered. I was even asked a question by a man who could only be Shikaku Nara about things on the front lines alongside Sunagakure, and thankfully I managed to suppress the nervous feeling of standing beside Minato-san. Seriously, why was I feeling like this? Enough to answer his question professionally, admitting that my information may be out of date. Eventually the questions died down and Sandaime-sama dismissed the assorted clan heads, Fugaku-sama pausing to send me another contemplative look before leaving. Well, I would say that was a successful mission, wouldn't you? Sandaime-Samantha asked cheerfully as he stood in front of his D-so in the chamber. There is just one more item to be covered, Jiraiya, Minato, your assessments. I blinked in confusion at his question as Jiraiya-sama stepped forward. She remained professional throughout the meeting, kept her cool when the fence-sitter addressed her directly. She definitely has the skills, he listed, making me realize that they were assessing me. With a bit more experience under her belt, she'll go a long way, I think. Sandaime-sama nodded before turning to Minato-san, who took that as his own cue. I agree with Sensei on all counts. She showed the necessary level of professionalism required. She is also well versed in tactics, collaboration techniques, and even political situations, he summarized. I blinked in confusion, completely lost at what they were talking about. I think she's ready for her promotion to Jonin. Oh, that's what they were talking about. Wait, what? I questioned in an absolute deadpan, staring at Sandaime-sama, who smiled in response. Well then, since you have the support of two of your commanding officers, I hereby approve your promotion to Jonin. Congratulations, Jonin Uchiha, he told me with an amused smile at my dropped jaw. We took the opportunity of the mission to Tetsu no Kuni to test to see if you were ready for a promotion. The Jonin commander at your last promotion forwarded a recommendation after you were forced to temporarily take control of the medic division when your mother was injured 3 months back, he explained to me. I recalled the day he was talking about. I had flown by the seat of my pants that entire freaking week. That is not all, however, Jiraiya commented as he fought back a grin. Indeed, with me stepping down soon, Minato will be needing a set of guards he can trust with his life, Sandaime-sama informed me, my eyes widening as I realized where this was going. I would like to offer the position as one of my bodyguards to you, Yuriko-chan, Minato-san told me with a slight smile on his face. You are young, yes, but you have length of potential for growth and I would be honored to have you at my side when I become Hokage. I began to feel lightheaded. Minato-san wanted me to be a part of his guard force. I accept. I shouted unintentionally, unable to control my volume due to my shock. The honor will be mine, Minato-sama. I look forward to working with you then, he told me cheerfully as a new alert popped up. Huh, I replied as I stared at the picture they used for my page, namely me with splashes of blood on my face as I glared elsewhere with an active Sharingan. That's something. Jiraiya-sama chuckled as he patted my back. Welcome to the big leagues, kid. Chances are the fence sitter will probably bump it up a bit in revenge after the meeting, he pointed out. But don't worry too much about it. Aside from the odd bounty hunter, not many will go out of their way to try and get you. Plus, with your position as the Hokage's bodyguard, you will spending plenty of time in Konoha with your duties to Minato, Sandaime-sama informed me gently. Plus, I will be doing some training with you and your new squad, Minato-sama elaborated. There are a few techniques that I want you all to learn. My heart skipped a beat at his words, a chance to learn from the Yondaime Hokage himself. Yeah, I look forward to it, Minato-sama. I said aloud, a bit louder than I intended, getting a chuckle from him. Very well then, you are dismissed for the rest of the day, Yuriko-chan, Sandaime-sama told me. Please report back here tomorrow morning to start your assignment. Yes, Hokage-sama, I replied, saluting proudly before I left the room, a skip in my step as I left. Holy crap, sometimes my gamer life, but then days like this roll around and things become awesome. Ah, welcome back, Yuriko-san. One of the guards called out. Heard you were a part of Hokage-sama's guard retinue to Tetsu no Kuni. Yup, I replied cheerfully, smiling at one of the guards. I even got to talk with Minato-sama and Jiraiya-sama about Fuinjutsu while we were traveling. Oh ho, that must have been quite the conversation, his partner said, grinning at me. Pick up any good tricks? Minato-sama taught me about seal compression, Jiraiya-sama showed me how to enhance my explosive notes, and Sandaime-sama actually taught me the next stage of nature manipulation training, I explained, my excitement clear in my voice as I spoke about my experience. Plus I got to spar with Minato-sama, got completely destroyed in under 2 minutes though. The pair stared at me with a slightly baffled expression before chuckling in amusement at I raved. Well, before you head home, Fugaku-sama wanted to meet you at the main family building, the first one told me with a grin. Not sure what he wanted to talk to you about, but he seemed pretty lost in thought. I blinked before remembering the curious looks he had been sending me during the meeting. Alright, I'll head over and see him now, I assured the two of them as I passed through into the compound. See ya later. I was greeted by a number of people as I walked through the district, several of them stopping to chat with me for a moment with a few of the shinobi calling out to me in greeting. Finally I was able to make it to the home of the clan head of the Uchiha and knocked on the door. I paused as the door was opened by a child around 4 years old, the tear tracks alongside his nose being a clear indicator on just who this child is. Yes. Itachi Uchiha questioned, staring up at me with wide eyes. It took every inch of my willpower not to squeal in excitement at the adorable look on his face. How could he be so cute as a kid? Hello, is your father in? He requested that I come meet him, I told the child, smiling at him. Okay. Please come in, Itachi told me, stepping back to allow me entry before running off deeper into the house, a dark-haired woman coming in shortly after he left. And you must be Yuriko-chan. Welcome, Makoto Uchiha greeted me with a kind smile. Shiger-san has been bragging about you since you've graduated. I flushed a bit in response at my mother's actions as I removed my heeled sandals from my feet. Thank you for welcoming me, I told her. Is Fugaku-sama in? Of course, he's in his office, Makoto told me as she gestured for me to follow her. I hear you were on the guard detail for Hokage-sama's trip. Man, that story is spreading far, isn't it? Yeah, it was a very informative trip, I replied with a smile. I was able to learn a lot while traveling with them. Really? They taught you something? Makoto looked at me in surprise as I beamed. Little things, but yeah. I confirmed. Sandaime-sama actually helped me with the second stage of my nature manipulation. That's good to know, Makoto replied, smiling back at me, something in her eyes as we came up to a door. Fugaku, dear, Yuriko-chan is here to see you. Send her in. Fugaku's voice filtered through the door, prompting Makoto to open it and allowed me entry. The head of my clan was seated at a desk, slowly working his way through a stack of paperwork as I entered. Please, sit, he requested, gesturing me to the chair across from him. I just wanted to know about the trip you took with Hokage-sama. I tilted my head a bit as I sat down, something niggling at the back of my mind as I answered him. I was a bit surprised that he wanted me to be a part of his detail, I explained, flushing a bit in embarrassment. Well, I think the entire thing was something of a test, because after the meeting, Hokage-sama promoted me to Jonin. I smiled at the memory. I was also given my new posting assignment. Sorry, but I'm actually not sure if I'm supposed to talk about it yet, Fugaku-sama. He nodded in understanding. That is fine, you don't need to tell me, he assured me, knowing that secrecy was needed as a shinobi. What happened during the mission? Well, I sparred with Minato-sama for a bit, I admitted with a shrug. I also talked with him and Jiraiya-sama about Fuinjutsu, and Sandaime-sama showed me the second stage of nature manipulation. Fugaku nodded with a contemplative look. I see, and how does your training progress? As I understand it, you were working on developing your Fuinjutsu when you left for the front at Kei's no Kuni. Yeah, I was working on clothing enforcement seals, mostly minor stuff right now, but with Minato-sama's help in showing me how to compress seals I should be able to improve them quite a bit, I admitted with a shrug. Also, Jiraiya-sama taught me a few tricks to improve explosive notes, it was really helpful. How is your mother doing? He asked, frowning a bit as he took in the information I told him. She's coping, I said, looking unsure. My father's death had hit her hard, but she was kept busy on the front lines. Yes, as I understand it, she ended up having to take command of the medics there when the last commander ended up dying during an assault, Fugaku-sama said, looking at me for confirmation. Yes, Nobuyoshi Taicho was when an infiltrator managed to slip in during an attack on our base, I confirmed, wincing at the memory of that particularly devastating attack. We were told that a replacement was going to be sent, but none ever arrived, so she ended up just staying in command with me as her second. Quite the accomplishment from one your age, the clan head said in a complimentary tone. As I understand it, you have been doing a lot of work with the chakra scalpel. Yeah, I kind of fell into it, to be honest. I flushed a bit, trying to resist the urge to hide my cheeks the collar of my flak vest. I ended up developing it further in combat. It's not exactly suitable for normal sparring matches. That's putting it lightly, Fugaku-sama said, giving me a dry grin. If I remember some of the reports right, you ended up being the assassin thatted the former medical commander by shredding his lungs with only a small cut. Yes, The scalpel is mostly an exterior effect, I admit, but it is capable of affecting the internal organs without breaking the skin. I explained the principle behind my primary technique, feeling a small growth of confidence as I spoke, Makoto-san returning with a tray of tea for us as I spoke. So, I ended up experimenting when I was in the field and managed to come up with a few offshoot techniques to use with chakra flow, chakra scalpel. I have to say, you are making impressive progress in your career, he told me calmly as he sipped on his tea. Especially with taking such an often overlooked jutsu and turning it into a specialty of yours. Thank you, Fugaku-sama, I replied, bowing my head a bit. I had a lot of help with it though. My brother and father taught me a lot on the uchiha taijutsu and kenjutsu, and my mother assisted me with a lot of the theory work for my jutsus. But you made use of those supports excellently, and managed to garner the attention of Hokage-sama himself, no small feat, he said approvingly. With time and training, I'd wager you'd surpass Tsunade-sama. My cheeks burned from his compliment. Fact of the matter was, Tsunade-sama was hands down the best medic ninja in the world, bar none. Even if myself, Saya Taicho and my mother were to somehow combine, we'd still probably wouldn't match her skills. I don't know about that, I replied modestly. Nonsense. You are an Uchiha, and we do have a tendency to be overachievers when we put our minds to something. I couldn't help but let out a little giggle at his half-joke. As I understand it, your brother and mother are still out in the field, dealing with the last of the clean-up operations out there. Please, stay for dinner tonight. I blinked in response to his offer and glanced over to Makoto-san, who smiled at me encouragingly. Ah, I'd be honored, Fugaku-sama, I replied after a second. Thank you for having me. It'll be ready soon, Makoto told us as she stepped out of the room, sending a grin our way. So, why don't you tell me some more about the Kei's no Kuni front? I've read the reports and I would like to get your perspective on things. I blinked, but nodded in agreement and settled myself in for the conversation. Dinner with the main family was an interesting experience. Fugaku-sama was a very stern person, but he did have a rather dry sense of humor to him that could be hard to miss if one wasn't either an Uchiha, or used to dealing with them. Makoto-san was a surprisingly energetic woman, doting on me and her son enough to make us blush, and little Itachi-kun was, well, quiet for the most part. He had obviously seen the effects of what the war did if the small winces he'd tried to cover up when the conversation came up were any indication. He did warm up to me eventually, however, asking me questions about the places I'd seen, and his expression of wonder when I told him about Tetsu no Kuni was downright adorable, especially when I told him about all the snow that had been on the ground. It was obvious he was a smart kid and objectively knew about snow and the weather, but it was still something else apparently to hear about an entire country covered by it. After dinner I helped Makoto-san with the cleanup to only a light amount of protest, the older woman only putting up the barest resistance to me helping her before saying my goodbyes to head home. It was when I was laying in bed that I remembered something. Fugaku had planned a coup in the canon timeline of the show. Was that what this meeting was about? Seeing if I agreed with that sentiment, or was it something else? Letting out a groan, I rolled over and shut those thoughts out of my head. Nothing I could do about it now, and I had to report in for my assignment tomorrow. The next morning I couldn't help but brim with excitement as I went through my morning routine, getting ready for my first official day as a Jonin. While I was getting dressed I paused as I reached for my flak vest and tilted my head in thought before opening my inventory, and pulling out the crimson chakra jacket, and pulling it on instead of the flak vest. Checking my reflection in my bedroom mirror I made a few adjustments to the fit before nodding in satisfaction and headed out the door. It was still very early in the morning when I left. The only people out were the early riser civilians that were getting their shops ready for the day, and fellow shinobi either heading to get their own assignment returning home from theirs. I made good progress through the village, taking to the rooftops to avoid getting stopped by the occasional civilian who wanted to strike up a conversation with the passing shinobi. Jonin Yuriko Uchiha to see Hokage-sama, I told the receptionist who looked over the appointment list and nodded. waving me through to the office proper. Inside I was greeted by Sandaime-sama with Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama on either side of him, 3 other Jonin standing before him. Ah, just in time, come on in, Yuriko-chan, Sandaime-sama requested, gesturing for me to join the other Jonin. Gentlemen, this will be the 4th member of your platoon, Yuriko Uchiha, Yuriko-chan, these will be your teammates, Rado Namiyashi, Genma Shiranui and Iwashi Tatami. Please look after me, senpais, I replied respectfully, bowing a bit to them. Pleased to meet you, Genma senpai replied, rolling the senbon around his mouth. It'll be good to have a proper medic on the team. I smirk a bit in response. Well, I'm not just a medic, you know, I told him proudly, making the 3 chuckle. Considering what I've heard from the front lines, I'm not going to argue that, Rado senpai told me with a theatrical shudder. Indeed, Sandaime-sama said, getting our attention back to him. Now, the 4 of you will be assigned to Minato in 1 week time when he is officially announced as my successor. For the next week you will be training with him to ensure that the 4 of you are able to work together. There is also a technique that I wish to teach to the 4 of you, a variant on the Hiraishin, Minato-sama continued, stepping forward. The Flying Thunder Formation technique, when used properly, it will allow the 4 of you to teleport as one to a marker placed on a person, in this case, myself. I blinked in surprise before recalling that I had seen it used in my past life on the show. Just for confirmation, but we aren't to say anything about us being assigned to Minato-san in relation to him becoming the Yondaime, correct? Iwashi senpai questioned, stepping forward. Correct. I'm sure there are already rumors of Minato succeeding me, but I would like it to remain that way, Sandaime-sama requested. Your new position will be obvious during Minato's inauguration next week. Understood, Hokage-sama. We all replied, saluting, getting a nod from Sandaime-sama. Minato-sama stepped forward with a smile. Well then, shall we get started with our training then? He offered, getting 4 nods of varying enthusiasm in return. The next week had been a draining one, in a rather good way though, Minato-sama putting us through our paces drilling in various formations utilizing the Flying Thunder formation, the technique itself requiring 3 of us to use it with the 4th in the middle, most often being myself, ready to take action upon being teleported. It was this time that I had first met Kushina Uzumaki. I was accompanying Minato-sama to his and Kushina-san's home after he convinced me to join them for dinner that night. We were greeted by Kushina-san as we entered, the woman pausing as I followed nervously after Minato-sama, looking me over with intense eyes before I suddenly found myself being held to the very enthusiastic Kushina-san who was fawning over me. Apparently she thought my professionalism was adorable. I'm a lethal Jonin, not adorable, thank you very much. I was quickly welcomed into their home after that, Kushina-san bustling me into the kitchen to sit me down as she chattered away, jumping from one subject to the next. Somehow I actually managed to keep up with the woman's conversation topics and managed to get my own words in. As we chatted we ended getting up onto a mutually interesting topic for all 3 of us, that being Fuinjutsu. So, you see, with a little adjustments to the array on the edges, that would allow the imprisonment jutsu to be remotely triggered instead of needing contact with the seal itself, Kushina-san rambled from the stove she was cooking at. I've been talking with the T&I guys and they're going to be running experiments with it to see if it is actually feasible for use. I nodded, showing her I understood what she was saying. It would actually be useful on the field as well. I remember when we were trying to capture a Kurigakure commander, squirrely bastard kept slipping the bonds, I groused with a sigh. Plus he was a Hazuka, so trying to keep a paper tag on him was almost impossible. Oh, tell me about it. While I wasn't on the K's no Kuni front like you were, I did face one in Kusa no Kuni was a bastard to pin down, Kushina said, sighing in agreement as she lifted the pot from the stove and placed it on the table, allowing me to see what she had been cooking, and I don't know why I was surprised, but it was ramen. But, dinner is ready. I was actually kinda ashamed to admit, but I never had ramen when I arrived, and that night with Kushina-san and Minato-sama was my first time having it, much to the aghast shock of Kushina-san. I honestly feel in love with the noodle dish with the first bite, practically inhaling my first bowl without even realizing it, much to my embarrassment as I let out a loud belch from eating too quickly. Thank you for dinner, Kushina-san, I said as I helped clean up after dinner, joining the redhead in washing the dishes. It was delicious. Of course, it was ramen. Kushina-san proudly declared with a wide grin. I have to admit, I was rather surprised when Minato-kun told me about you, Yuriko-chan. I paused, my eyes widening as my face heated a bit. Minato-sama talked about me. I squeaked out in surprise, making Kushina-san giggle, a knowing look of some kind in her violet eyes. Yup. When he told me that you were being assigned as one of his guards, I just knew I had to meet you, and I must say, you are just the most adorable Jonin there is. She said praisingly, making me flush under her praise. I'm not adorable, Kami, damn it. Not even Kakashi-kun was adorable as you are when he first became a Jonin. I shuffled a bit in response. I'm nothing special, I tried to respond only to get off by the redhead. Of course you are. You must be related to Obito-kun, he was just as modest as you are. She told me, making me freeze, realization filling me. I forced my body to continue moving as I pushed down the knowledge that I failed to prevent the creation of Toby. Your family is still deployed, correct? I nodded in confirmation, glad for the distraction from the topic I was thinking about. Yeah, I got word that they'll be back the day before the inauguration, I told her, putting a smile on my face. I have to admit, the house kind of feels empty without them around though. Well, that settles that then, you're staying here until they get back. Kushina-san declared loudly to me, making me blink and look up at the older woman. Minato-kun, get the guest room ready. Minato-sama chuckled at his fiancée's girlfriend's enthusiasm. Surely he'll save me from whatever terrible thing Kushina-san had planned. I figured you'd say that, it's already prepared for her, he assured Kushina-san. Oh great, that means I get to play dress up with Yuriko-chan tomorrow. Kushina announced happily. Minato-sama, you traitor. Yuriko-chan. My mother called out in greeting as she rushed up to give me a tight hug that I gladly returned to her with equal force, Sakari ni-san following shortly after her, smiling at me over our mother's shoulder. Are you alright? Were you injured on the mission? Did everything go alright? I giggled in response to my mother's series of rapid-fire questions, patting her on her back to assure her. Yes, I'm fine, Mom, I told her warmly. I wasn't injured and everything went as smoothly as it could have, I was even promoted. I heard about that, my mother said cheerfully as she finally pulled away, smiling at me. And I think you grew another couple of inches on me, young lady. I blushed in response as my brother came up and ruffled my hair. Hey, a squirt. Heard you pissed the Tsuchikage off something fierce at the meeting, he told me with a chuckle. He was throwing threats around and I told him that I would enjoy sending him the brass balls of his assassins back to him, I replied with a grin. I did also suggest he could start a collection of them. My brother started laughing as my mother gaped at me. Yuriko Uchiha, who taught you how to talk like that? She questioned fiercely. You did when we were attacked by that Iwa nin. I shot back, matching her glare. My mom blinked before letting out an ah sound. Oh, that's all right then, she informed dismissively, making me and my brother start laughing again. Yuriko-chan. A body impacted me from behind, making me stagger a bit under the weight of Chika-chan as she glomped me. I've missed you so much. Are you okay? I heard you got promoted again. Did you really escort Hokage-sama to the ceasefire signing? Don't think she can say anything with you continually questioning her there. Chika-chan, Aoi-kun said as he approached, looking less tense than when he was on the field in Kei's no Kuni, Hisai-sensei not far behind him. I missed you too, Chika-chan, I giggled, hugging my friend in return. And yes, I did get promoted. Congratulations then, Yuriko, Hisai-sensei told me, giving me a proud smile. You earned it after K's no kuni. Thank you, sensei, I replied brightly. What about you two and your snazzy new vests? My two friends smiled brightly in response as they adjusted the chunin vests in response to my question. We got promoted just after you left, Aoi-kun explained. Hopefully this means we can start going on higher ranked missions together again. I wasn't able to hide my wins from the two of them. I wish I could, guys, but I'm not sure how often I will be able to, I admitted with an apologetic smile to them. I was given a new posting to go with my new rank, sorry. Aoi-kun and Chika-chan both had disappointed looks on their faces while Hisai-sensei gave me an understanding nod. Well, I guess we'll just have to look forward to when we can go on missions together again. Chika-chan said brightly, trying to break the somewhat sour mood that had descended upon us. I'm sure you'll get your chance eventually, Ni-san told us as he stepped forward. Now, how about we all go out and celebrate all of your promotions, it'll be on me. Well, I hope you're ready for us to eat you out of house and home then. Aoi-kun shouted challengingly, causing the rest of us to laugh as we made our way towards one of the restaurants owned by the Akamikes, picking up more friends and comrades as we walked. I could feel my chest swelling with pride as I stood at attention behind Minato-sama on top of the Hokage Tower, before the entire village, shinobi gathering on the rooftops while civilians milled in the streets below as Minato-sama recited his pledge to protect the village from all threat internal and external before Sandaime-sama became the first Hokage in history to actually retire and pass the symbolic hat onto Minato-sama, who was now wearing his signature white cloak. Then, myself, Rado-senpai, Genma-senpai and Iwashi-senpai stepped forward as one and knelt down to Minato-sama. We swear, as loyal shinobi of Konohagakure and Hai no Kuni, we shall serve the Yondaime Hokage until death or our services are no longer required, we recited with practiced ease. Rado-senpai was very insistent on that, the Hokage's guard oath. We shall be your sword and shield, to be used as you see fit and guided by your hand alone. With those words recited, the members of Sandaime-sama's Hokage guard stepped forward, symbolically passing on a ninjutsu, the weapons themselves being only ceremonial in nature, not that they weren't functional weapons, signifying us as the guards of the new Hokage while they continued to protect the former. The crowd roared in response as the ceremony concluded, cheering Minato-sama on as he stood over them, the wind blowing at just the right angle to catch his cloak, allowing it to billow around him as the wind carried leaves in front of him. I allowed myself a smile as I stood at attention behind him, feeling a sense of belonging as I knew I was where I should be. My mother and brother had been invited to the Namikaze household to join in the festivities of celebrating Minato-sama's inauguration as the Yondaime Hokage, the two of them telling me how proud they were of me before my professional image had been completely ruined by Kushina-san, now showing signs of her pregnancy with Naruto, crashed into me, babbling excitedly about how adorable I looked up there between the adults. My mother's jaw dropped as my brother fell over in laughter as I feebly protested for the 100th time that I was a professional kunoichi, not adorable. But that just broke my mother out of her shock as she joined Kushina-san in thoroughly embarrassing me, much to the amusement of the other guests. It was an enjoyable night and one that I would always look back on with a fond smile as I remembered laughing with my brother as my mom completely humiliated my senpais in arm wrestling. Struggling against my mother's and Kushina-san's gripe, shouting at someone to save me as they dragged me away to play dress up, although I did manage to convince them to drag a stunned Kakashi into the mess, which is coincidentally my first meeting with the teen genius. He looked adorable, giving me a death glare in the pink dress Kushina-san and my mother forced him into. It was towards the end of the night when I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, Jiraiya-sama drunkenly singing a lewd sailor's song of some kind to everyone's enjoyment. Feeling a presence beside me, I looked over to see my brother standing there with a fond smile on his face as he joined me. "You're really growing up fast there, Squirt," he commented softly as he sat down next to me on the swinging bench set up on the porch in the backyard. "Becoming a member of the Hokage's guard platoon is a pretty big step, how you feeling about it?" I smiled in response, leaning into him as he placed an arm around me. I feel ready for it, I admitted, closing my eyes for a second as I enjoyed the warmth of my brother's presence. It's hard to explain, but I really want to protect Minato-sama. I could feel heat building on my cheeks a bit as I spoke. I mean, I know he's incredibly strong and smart, and I'm just a kid who's gotten lucky to have gotten a few things right for myself, but whenever he looks at me, it feels like he's looking at an equal, and it makes me feel really happy inside and like my heart wants to break out of my chest and I don't know why. And my brother cut me off, placing a finger on my lips to quiet me. Because you love him, he said knowingly, making my eyes widen as I looked up at him in disbelief. We Uchiha arena known for doing things by half measures, and that goes doubly true for our emotions. When we love we do it with our entire being, and when we hate we feel it down to our toes. It is the source of our greatest strength, and our greatest weakness. I watched as he reached for the glass he had set on the wicker coffee table beside him, missing his first attempt to grab it even though he was looking right at it before grabbing it on his second try. How bad is your eyesight? I asked him in concern, rising myself up to my knees to place a glowing hand on either side of his head. He grimaced in response. About halfway gone almost, he admitted in response, allowing me to run my healing chakra through his system, even though he knew it wouldn't do anything for his sight. I think the rate has been increased a bit since I learned how to completely manifest the Susanoo. I frowned deeply in response as I desperately tried to find a way to heal his eyesight with my chakra. There has to be a way to restore your eyesight, I said desperately as I cut off the flow of chakra. I mean, we know Madara had the Mangekyo since he was only just a few years older than me and he never went blind. There is only one way to restore the sight taken by the Mangekyo Sharingan, my brother grimly stated, my heart clenching as I knew the words that were going to come out of his mouth. By transplanting the eyes of a direct blood relative who has unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan into your own. Then, we just need to trade eyes if I unlock mine then. I told him, not caring if the others could hear me. My brother shook his head. That doesn't work, Yuriko-chan, he told me softly. It just makes the rate of decay worse. The eyes must be directly implanted into the recipients. One must sacrifice their sight forever for the other to regain theirs. There must be a way to avoid that. If I research it then maybe. Yuriko-chan, thank you, but I have already come to terms with it, he cut me off, hugging me tightly. And I decided that if the day comes and you experience enough grief that you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, I will give up my light so that your will continue on. Oh Oni-san, it was the only thing I could get out between my choked sobs as I tightly hugged him in response. I love you, little flower, he whispered into my ear. The nickname he used for me before I entered the academy caused more tears to well up in my eyes. Even when you were just a child and had no idea what you had done, you shone a light into my life when it was the darkest, and that is why I am willing to sacrifice it for your light. I don't know how long I had sobbed into his shoulder before I fell asleep in his arms, but he stayed there the entire night, Kushina-san giving me a picture of the two of us sleeping on that swinging bench, with me lying on top of my brother's chest as we slept. But to this day, that picture remained on the nightstand beside me bed, frame and protected by the strongest seals I could create, so that whenever I woke up, I would see the love my brother had for me. My personal duties as one of Minato-sama's guards was initially that of his assistant. Every morning I would arrive a little before Minato-sama to organize his appointments for the day before helping him sort through the various non-critical mission reports that arrived overnight and placed on his desk by the Anbu on duty after ensuring nothing dangerous was planted within. As the day would go on I would remind him of important meetings and shadow him to all but the absolute highest level of classified meetings, making notes for him on things he may have missed that I would go over with him later in private. That changed 4 months after Minato-sama had become the Hokage. Kushina-san entered the 5th month of pregnancy. I was assigned to start guarding Kushina-san and ensure the health of her and the baby while Kakashi protected her from any possible physical threat looking to harm her. During this time, I had basically taken over the spare bedroom inside of their house as my own, Minato-sama wanting me on hand at all times in case something went wrong. Kushina-san was equally annoyed and amused by his overprotectiveness, but she did love the fact that it allowed her to host my 10th birthday party in her home, my mother helping her with all the preparations, shooing me and Kakashi outside of the house. The night of June 21st was a fairly noisy one as all of my friends and acquaintances gathered in the Namikaze home to celebrate the 10th year of my life. Gifts came in aplenty, ranging from a full set of formal kimonos from Saya Taicho to a set of Uzumaki sealing scrolls from Kushina-san, who said her family would hate the fact that they would go to waste just sitting around gathering dust, and everything in between. But, even with that, in the back of my mind and the pit of my stomach, I could feel the dreaded day on approach, the day the masked man would come and leave little Naruto-kun an orphan. I refused to allow such a thing to happen, so I threw myself into my training, sparring often and regularly against Kakashi, who seemed to be needing the outlet himself and developing new seals to try and help me. The most notable seal I created was the marker seal that I had discussed with Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama so long ago during our trip to Tetsu no Kuni. The seal allowed me to mark people with a seal much like Minato-sama did with his Hiraishin, and once marked, I was able to track their signature up to 10 miles away in any direction, and once I had practice with it I was even able to tell the person's physical well-being so long as they were within that radius. Using those markers I was able to guide Reito Senpai, Genma Senpai and Iwashi Senpai with a greater degree of accuracy when we were using the Flying Thunder formation. As the day approached, plans were made to move Kushina out of Konohagakure in secret so that if the worst case did happen and Minato-sama was not able to reinforce her seal properly, at least the Kyuubi would be far enough away to give the villagers some warning. I was present for the birth, assisting Sandame-sama's wife with the process. While I admit this was the first time present for a birth of any kind, I was far more distracted by the fact that I was trying to sense the arrival of the masked man while making sure Naruto-kun was coming out of Kushina-san all right, to feel in our disgust by the entire process. I cut the umbilical cord for Bawako-san, who then took the baby to be cleaned and wrapped in a towel. He's perfectly healthy, I assured the two parents, who sighed and sagged in relief, seconds before I felt a sharp pain in my kidney. Looking down, following Minato-sama's and Kushina-san's shocked eyes, I found the business end of a standard issue ninjutsu impaling me, second before I toppled to the side, being roughly tossed away by Obito Uchiha, who was now threatening little Naruto-kun's life. Nananano! I mentally screamed as Minato-sama began his fight with the masked man, desperately trying to push the weapon out of my body, even as my vision began to blur for the intense pain. I let out a strangled gasp as I finally managed it. My hands, glowing with healing chakra, flew to my stomach as I tried to heal the wound as quickly as I could. If I was fast enough, then I could still save them before the Kyuubi was released. I felt a hand on my shoulder just as I was almost finished healing my wound before the now familiar sense of vertigo that was Minato-sama's Hiraishin overcame me, and I was in the middle of the wood, Kushina-san laying on an altar covered in seals and looking extremely weak. Kushina-san! I shouted as I ignored my not fully healed wound to rush to her side, placing my healing chakra upon her. Naruto-kun, she gasped out desperately, looking at Minato-sama, who smiled before teleporting the three of us to one of the safe houses where Naruto lay waiting. Oh, my baby! Kushina-san cried out happily as Minato-sama placed him in her arms. I barely noticed as Minato-sama vanished in flash of yellow as I focused as much of my energy on trying to keep her alive. No, I can't let this happen. I can't let Naruto-kun grow up alone. I screamed at myself mentally, biting my bottom lip hard enough to draw blood as I desperately tried to heal the wound that was inflicted upon Kushina-san, and utterly beyond my abilities to heal. I couldn't stop the tears from spilling from my eyes as the cold realization filled me. I felt a warm and gentle hand on my cheek, turning my attention to Kushina-san, who was smiling warmly at me. Yuriko-chan, look after Naruto-kun for me, okay? She requested, making my eyes widen as I tried to shake my head in denial of the situation. No, I can save you, I have to save you. I cried out as I tried pumping more healing chakra into the incredibly warm and loving person before me. Please, you can't die, Kushina-san. Why am I not strong enough? Kushina-san smiled sadly as me. Because sometimes, we just never are strong enough, she told me comfortingly before turning my face to little Naruto-kun. Protect him for me, she begged. Be there for him where I can't be. I nodded weakly, closing my eyes, not trusting myself to speak before I let out a choked sob. I'm sorry, Yuriko-chan, you really are adorable, Kushina whispered apologetically, before I felt something being placed on the back of my neck and felt all control of my limbs leave me. But, I can't have Naruto-kun's big sister dying because she decided to do something foolish. Shina-san? I questioned weakly, staring with a betrayed expression at the red-haired women I had come to love, who smiled sadly, tears in her eyes being the last thing I saw before I lost consciousness. I let out a gasp as I jerked awake, in full control of my limbs as I bolted to my feet, ignoring the pain on my stomach as my partially healed wound tore open a bit at the rushed motion. No, Kushina-san, Minato-sama, I screamed out as I ran out of the small safe house, hearing the screams of a child. Ignoring my burning wound, I followed the screams to a devastated tract of land where I found Naruto-kun, crying before the still bodies of Kushina-san and Minato-sama. My anguished cries joined the orphans as Sandame-sama arrived on the scene, a horrified look on his face as he beheld me weeping over the corpses of the Yondaime and his wife. On that day, I knew failure and loss like I never had before. I learned the price of my clan's power, the bitter feeling of helplessness. I knew what it meant to gain the Mangekyo Sharingan. It seemed that the kami shared their grief with Konohagakure, thought one Shigure Uchiha as she listlessly busied herself in the kitchen. The devastation caused by the Kyuubi's rampage amplified by the death of the Yondaime and his wife. It's been 5 days since the Kyuubi had been unleashed upon Konoha, and the dark clouds and rain had not let up. She had grown to like the red-haired Uzumaki woman, and she could see why her daughter was enamored with her and her husband, but that knowledge did nothing to help her comfort her daughter. She looked down the hallway where her daughter's room was. The distraught girl, having holed herself up in the room as soon as she returned from the hospital yesterday, dropped off by her concerned squadmate Genma, who told Shigure that if Yuriko needed anything then to get into contact with any of them. It touched the mother's heart that her daughter had such reliable friends, and she knew that her daughter would need them, especially when the Sandame stopped by and explained how he found her, weeping over their bodies, a barely healed and returned wound in her gut. And a 5-petaled flower in place of her Sharingan as she wept tears of blood. The news shook Shigure to the core as she began to wonder why her children were cursed to bear the powerful evolution of their bloodline, when neither herself, nor their father had. Letting out a sigh, she turned away from the door that refused to open even when she left food in front of it. She let out a sigh as she looked in on her son's empty room. He had been leading a company in a counter-attack on the Kyuubi and attempted to use his Koshinto to teleport the Kyuubi away in an attempt to buy more time for Konohagakure ninja and evacuation attempts. He had succeeded in moving it back 30 feet and nearly died from chakra exhaustion from the effort. He was still in the hospital, unconscious to the world and under constant supervision to ensure he didn't die from his efforts to protect the village. More Uchiha had followed his example, the clan head Fugaku-sama rallying the combat-capable members of the clan into actions, even as some of the untrained members rushed into the village proper to usher civilians into the various shelters. A knock on the door broke her from her musing as she moved to answer, blinking in surprise as a grim-faced Jiraiya was at her door. Jiraiya-sama, she greeted, bowing to the Sanin respectfully. Please, come in, may I get you some tea? Sorry, Shigure-san, this isn't exactly a social call, he told her with a sad look. How is she? Shigure winced as she looked back towards her daughter's room. She hasn't been eating, hasn't said a word or even come out of her room, she answered, biting the inside of her cheek to contain her tears. I tried to get in, but I think she sealed her room off. Jiraiya nodded in understanding. Unfortunately, she needs to report to the Hokage on the incident, he admitted with a deep frown. A lot of questions are being asked, and she is the only survivor who can actually be questioned. My daughter would never harm the Yondaime or his wife. Shiger snapped, all traces of her sadness vanishing as her motherly rage surfaced. She loved them more than anyone else in this village, she would herself before bringing harm to them. I know, Jiraiya said reassuringly, patting her shoulder gently, getting her to calm down. As does Sensei and many on the council, but as it stands, she is the only one who could have seen what may have happened. Shiger let out a shuddering sigh as she sagged. Please, Jiraiya-sama, keep her safe, she pleaded as she stepped back to allow the Sannin entry into her home. You have my word, Jiraiya solemnly swore as he entered and followed the mother to the door to her daughter's room. Yeah, she's definitely put up a seal on this, Jiraiya said as he placed a hand on the door and sent a careful pulse of chakra through it. An Uzumaki seal if I'm not mistaken. He then knocked on the door loudly. Yuriko, Sensei needs you to report in, he announced loudly in a gentle, but professional tone. And your posting isn't done. There was some shuffling heard through the door before the door opened, Shiger forcing herself not to rush forward and hug her daughter. Yuriko looked nothing like her usual cheerful self, her once carefully maintained hair was a tangled mess, her eyes, once filled with life and happiness were puffy with dark circles surrounding them as she stared listlessly at Jiraiya. What mission? She croaked out, her once vibrant voice was a hollow shell of its former self. I failed it, I couldn't save them, they're dead because I wasn't strong enough. Shiger could feel her heart clench as her daughter spoke, gritting her teeth as she tried to stop herself from rush forward again. This was the most anyone had gotten out of her since she had been dropped off by the Sandaime. So, you're just going to leave there or running free without doing anything? Jiraiya said, getting a twitch from her daughter. And what about Naruto? The child you helped bring into this world that night? Are you just going to leave their child abandoned? That got a reaction from Yuriko as her eyes flashed angrily. And what about you? She snapped back, her listless voice filling with anger. You're his godfather, why not you? Why not Kakashi? He's Minato-sama's student. Jiraiya weathered her anger with a calm patience. If I could, I would in a heartbeat, he told her. But you know how many enemies Minato had. They would instantly suspect any blonde child with me as the Minatos. Kakashi wouldn't be much better, not to mention he's emotionally stunted and retreated into the Anbu core as soon as the dust settled. If anyone were to be able to take in Minato and Kushina's son, it has to be you. To the other countries, you were just a pet project for him, a way to show unity in the village, they wouldn't think twice about a blonde kid in your presence. Yuriko reeled back as if struck by Jiraiya's words, but the Sannin didn't give her a chance to recover before snapping out again. You are also the only one who saw what happened that night. The only one who can point us to their murderer. He shouted, his voice rising unintentionally. Or are you not wanting to bring the one responsible to justice? Yuriko reeled again, folding up on herself a bit as tears dropped to the floor. Jiraiya held an arm in front of Shiger, preventing her from rushing to her daughter's side. Jonin Yuriko Uchiha, are you shirking your duty to Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki? He questioned in a low voice, as if he were challenging her. Never. Yuriko spat out with such vehemence that the two adults reeled back in surprise as the first Uchiha to be made a member of the Hokage's guard platoon stood up, her eyes burning with a determination that left any doubts in ruins. Good, Jiraiya announced with a firm nod and voice. Make yourself presentable, Sensei summoned you to make your report. Yes, Jiraiya-sama, Yuriko replied with a nod as she stepped back into her room, Shiger darting in after her as the white-haired Sannin let out a shuddering breath in the hallway. It has to be you, kid, he murmured to himself as he waited. You're about the only one who can properly protect Naruto now. It was hard, forcing myself to move after days of laying curled up in my bed, not even having the energy to cry. But I moved nonetheless, letting my mother help me get presentable, doing my best to try and take some of her strength in as my own as she straightened my neglected hair as I pulled on the standard Jonan's uniform for the coming meeting. Sorry, I mumbled out to my mother as she finished combing my hair into its usual straight manner. For making you worry, for not being there. It's okay, my mother whispered into my ear, placing her hands on my shoulders as she rested her forehead on my scalp. I understand, you love the two of them so much, it's only natural for you to be depressed. I nodded slowly, swallowing back my tears as I checked my appearance over once more. I need to get going, I whispered to her, hugging her for a moment before breaking away. I'll be back as soon as I can be. My mother gave me the warmest smile she could muster as she nodded, wiping away a few tears of her own before kissing my forehead affectionately and letting me leave with Jiraiya-sama. My body screamed at me as I exerted it, following Jiraiya-sama out onto the rooftops, but I ignored it as the Sanin gave me an update on the status of the village, and about my brother who was in the hospital, almost barely clinging to life. A stab of guilt tore through me, joining the ever-growing pile. At that news, the treacherous parts of my mind telling me that I should have been there to help him, that I should have prevented the need for it from the very beginning. I shook my head free of those thoughts and focused ahead of myself as we arrived at the Hokage's tower, the building having seen better days, but representing Konoha by being battered, but still standing. We weren't stopped as Jiraiya-sama led the way through the building, getting us to the council chamber in short order where the Hokage sat behind his desk with the entirety of the council in session, only a few members missing. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Yuriko-chan, Sandaime-sama said gently, once again wearing the Hokage's hat. Another surge of guilt was suppressed at the sight of it as I stood at attention. As the only survivor, you are the only one we can turn to that can answer what happened that night with the Yondaime and his wife. I took in a careful breath before I responded. Everything had been going according to plan, I reported in what I hoped was my professional voice, although I could hear it cracking. But, as soon as the child was born, Bawako-san was and I was stabbed from behind, I swallowed tightly. The man who attacked us had gotten a hold of the Yondaime's son. He was wearing a gray right-eyed mask with black markings on it, and I caught a glimpse of a Mangekyo Sharingan. What? Fugaku-sama shouted in shock as the other council members began to stir in an unsure member. Can you describe it, or recognize it if seen? I licked my lips a bit as I closed my eyes in thought. I only saw one Sharingan, but the one I saw was like a three-pointed shuriken with lines connected the three blades, I reported as best as I could. If I had some paper I could draw it. Jiraiya quickly produced a sheaf of paper and a pen for me to start drawing it. I must admit, I am suspicious if he really is an Uchiha though, whether an active or bastard child, I continued as I drew the Sharingan. The reason Obito was able to do so much damage was because no one knew he existed until it was too late. He might have targeted a clan member who had only just awoken theirs and stole it. I passed the paper on to Sandaime-sama who nodded and showed it to Fugaku-sama who frowned and studied it. Her idea holds merit, he announced as he closed his eyes. We keep a record on all who awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan along with making an image of the design it takes, that is not one that I recognize. Is it possible one of your clan members would hide such a thing? Shikaku Nara questioned, looking downright exhausted. Possible, but extremely unlikely, as Sandaime-sama can attest, having seen the awakening of Yuriko-sans, Fugaku-sama reported, looking at Sandaime-sama who nodded grimly. The user will be crying tears of blood for a period of time afterwards, and it only awakens after a traumatic event that leaves the victim with overwhelming feelings of guilt. Most users end up committing suicide shortly after from their grief. Can you show us your own? Inoichi Yamanaka questioned me gently, making me blink and look over to him. I must admit to my own curiosity, but many of us have never seen it before. Taking a breath, I nodded before activating my Sharingan, concentrating. I could feel a stabbing pain in my eyes as the world shifted for a lack of a better word. Everything was Clearer, more defined, I could see every minute movement the council was making as they moved, and beyond that, I could feel what they could do, the information filling my mind as the Mangekyu activated. Kamionaneo, 7 generations of the Age of Gods inhabited my right eye, a localized space-time ninjutsu that warped time into replicating any ninjutsu I used up to 7 times, in the exact same way it had been activated in the first place. And in my left eye was Ama no Ukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven, another space-time technique that would allow me to warp the trajectories of any ninjutsu within my eyesight. I blinked, shutting down my Sharingan completely, staggering a bit, causing Jiraiya-sama and, surprisingly, Fugaku-sama to leap to my side, steadying me as the rush of power I felt faded from my body, leaving me feel a bit sluggish. "It'll get easier," Fugaku-sama assured me in a low voice as he waved for a chair to be brought over to me. "As you grow more adjusted to it, the deactivation won't leave you feeling weak." I blinked up at him in surprise as he smiled tightly in response to my surprise, his own eyes flashing the Mangekyu Sharingan, a thinner, mirrored version of Itachi's with a dot between each blade, to show me before it faded. He spoke up again, cutting off my attempt to question him on it. "While it grants an incredible amount of power, it comes at a terrible cost in addition to the activation event," Fugaku-sama announced as he moved back to his seat on the council. "The more we use the Mangekyu Sharingan, the more we lose our eyesight. Is it possible to repair the damage?" A man I didn't recognize questioned, a calculating look in his eye. "Not with Iriojutsu," I admitted, looking down at my hands, my eyes throbbing a bit at the memory of activating my Mangekyu. "My brother, Sakari Ni-san, has it, and his eyesight has been getting worse lately. I tried everything I could to fix the damage short of surgery, but I couldn't even find any indication of damage to his eyes." "What she says is true," Fugaku-sama admitted. "There is only one way we know of to repair the damage, and the only one to use it was Madara, and he had stolen his brother's eyes, leaving him for dead in order to restore his sight and evolve it to the ultimate form of the Sharingan." He swallowed tightly as he closed his eyes. "We have made attempts to find a way around it, volunteers stepping forward to trade their eyes, but they don't work. The only way is to implant the eyes of a close blood relative into your own." "Troublesome," Shikaku-san stated simply. Sandaime-sama nodded in agreement. "Yuriko-chan, you heard what your brother did for Konoha, correct?" He questioned me, prompting a nod in response. As the one who is the most familiar with how much of his sight was lost beforehand, how much do you think he lost from his attempt to defend Konoha? I swallowed tightly in response. "I think he might wake up without his sight," I said finally after several moments of trying to speak. "And if he hasn't, then any more usage of it will render him blind." Several of the council members lowered their heads in respect to this, Sandaime-sama nodding as he accepted the situation. "With your permission, Hokage-sama, I would like to move him into the military police instead of active duty," Fugaku-sama spoke up. "I think he's sacrificed enough already for the defense of Konoha. I will have the papers sent to you as soon as we're finished here," Sandaime-sama stated with a nod. "All in favor of rating this masked individual as an S-rank threat to be exterminated on sight?" Every single council member spoke up in a grim tone. "Very well. I shall have the bingo books updated as soon as possible," he confirmed. "You are all dismissed. Yuriko-chan, Jiraiya, can you both please remain?" Nodded as the council members began trickling out of the council chambers one after the other, Fugaku-sama pausing briefly to pat my shoulder in a surprisingly encouragingly manner before leaving. "How may I serve, Hokage-sama?" I asked, stepping forward to him. His eyes were saddened as he looked me over. No doubt he could clearly see the signs of my grief and guilt that have been racking at me. "How are you feeling, Yuriko-chan?" he questioned me softly, gesturing for me to relax. I sagged a bit as I let go of my hold over my emotions, Jiraiya-sama supporting me with his hands on my shoulders, tears tracking down my cheeks as I sobbed a bit. "Tired. I'm just so tired, Hokage-sama," I admitted as I met his concerned gaze. He nodded in understanding, standing up. I think, before you go home and rest, there is someone you should meet, he told me, the two older shinobi guiding me to his office proper where a cat-masked Anbu saluted him as we entered, a small crib set up in the room. Yuriko-chan, please, meet Naruto Uzumaki-kun. I blinked as I looked into the crib, biting back a choked sob as I saw the slumbering, whiskered, face of Minato-sama and Kushina-san's son. Oh, Naruto-kun, I murmured, hesitantly reach in to gently touch his cheek, the child stirring a bit as his stunning blue eyes opened up and stared at me before gurgling happily at me and smiling.